Like your meditation.
You know, for me, I absolutely adored working at Commodore. It was my DNA. I couldn't wait to get into work every day. My team was fantastic, and we loved every second of every day. It was just amazing. It was terrific. Like when you're seeing people coming around like scavengers bidding for things. Well, I'll give you £5 for that table, and £2 for this and all of that. It was horrible, really. But more than that, it's like, because it was the end of an era, and for me personally, I mean, it had been such a huge part of my DNA for 12 and a half years. It's really, I'm guessing, although thankfully I've never had the feeling, but I'm guessing it must have been like losing a child.
They were probably the largest, or second largest PC manufacturer in Europe, and they bought out the Silica stores in the UK. I think they bought out 100 and odd stores. And Rumbelows, yeah. Well, they produced this thing called the Walker. Yeah, it looked like a cross between a vacuum cleaner, Darth Vader's helmet, and K9 Doctor Who's metal dog.
We went to see Manfred Schmidt, who was the founder and managing director of ESCOM, and we suggested that it might be a worthwhile thing for him to consider buying Commodore UK as a going concern. And I think this is probably indicative of them as a company. He tried to blackmail Colin and I, and he said that I will buy Commodore UK, but only if you and Colin work for me. And frankly, we didn't want to work for him. And then he said, well, in that case, then he said, you'll have to go back and tell all your employees that they're out of a job because you turned me down. There is a massive need for in our community is to find out what has happened since ESCOM bought the assets from Commodore in the auction in New York, which I was actually at. What happened, how ESCOM basically screwed things up.
I would say people had real, genuine plans to rebuild the Amiga platform, and some were definitely hoaxes, but the vast majority of people spent a lot of time, money, and effort trying to recreate the Amiga dream. And I always, when I say Amiga dream, it always sounds a bit strange, but it really was. If you're an Amigan today, dating back to the 80s and 90s, I mean, it was a fantastic time for computing.
In my opinion, it's the most significant technology I've seen since Commodore.
The story that Dave and I are going to tell will tell about the post-Commodore. Yeah, all right, there's lots of lows, but there are many highs. But actually, how it actually survived and continues to today in all its various, and I say wonderful forms. And let's celebrate the wonderful forms.
It was a mess. It was definitely court cases and what have you. But through all of that, we've come up with some incredible developments. So I've called the book From Vultures to Vampires, 25 years of copyright chaos and technological triumph.
We are joined today, like I said, by my partner in crime, Mr. Anthony Becker, and our guest of honor at the top of the screen there is former Managing Director of Commodore UK, Mr. David John Pleasance. Welcome to the stream, gentlemen.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming on, David.
Hello.
What's up, Anthony? Anthony, I mentioned, back we used to have Westchester Amiga User Group, and you are a point man. You were kind of on point with all the Amiga IP getting passed back and forth from everyone, from like one company to another, and so you are going to be a really great, valuable resource for us today, Anthony. So thank you for taking the time to come on the screen, and David, thank you so much for coming on. I'm super excited. I love your first book. I've got it right here, Commodore: The Inside Story. This was an incredible book that David wrote about his experience at Commodore, and he didn't pull any punches, man. He told it like it was. How did it go, David? Are you happy with are you happy with the success of the book?
Absolutely ecstatic, to be honest with you. I never imagined in my wildest dreams that it would be as well received as it has been. I was a reluctant author, to be honest with you, mainly because I've never written anything in my life, probably not even a story when I was a kid at school. But when I came back into the industry after an absence of so many years, and so many people were coming up to me and saying, "Oh, we wish you'd actually bought the Amiga," and la di la di la, and it turns out that I had a lot of stories that everybody kept saying to me, "Well, you should write about that. You should write about that." So in the end, I got persuaded I should do so, and to be honest with you, when I finished writing my side of the story, which was everything that I knew being true from what I'd actually witnessed with my own ears and eyes, I read back what I'd written, and I didn't like it because it was more a story, in my opinion, about David Pleasance than it was about Commodore. But I guess in a way it was inevitable because it was what I'd seen through my own eyes and ears. So then I decided what I'd do is I'd broaden the book by getting other people from inside Commodore who all had their own different viewpoints of the same subject. So we ended up putting lots of chapters in there from different people. And without any doubt, it was the right thing to do because now the book has a very broad perspective. And on top of that, I added a few very short sort of comments and quotes from people who were not inside Commodore, but actually dealt with Commodore. So I think it gives a very, very accurate and positive reflection. I don't mean positive in every respect, but it's a true reflection of exactly what happened in the years that I was at Commodore.
David, is the book still available? I see a lot of folks in chat are really excited about the book. Some of them have seen it, some of them haven't. Is it still available for purchase? And where can they get it?
Yeah, I do have a few copies left, and I must stress it is only a few copies because I actually did 2 print runs. I've got a few left, and I've got a website which I ultimately will be closing down in the next month or two because we've opened a new website for the new book. But the old website where you can certainly get this book from, it's called downtimepublishing.com. That's all one word, downtimepublishing.com. And anybody who buys it, that's my direct website. And anybody who buys from that book from me, I will sign the book if you wish and post it out personally. And all I can tell you is that I've only had one person complain about the book, and I'm quite certain from reading this person's complaint that he never read the book. Everybody else has loved it. So I think you'll find it's a very good read. It's 368 pages, 90,000 words, lots of pictures. And I think if you are a fan of Commodore and or Amiga, then this is something that you probably should have on your shelf.
I was going to say, I would hope that wasn't what you thought about what I wrote you about your book.
No. This one person will remain unnamed, unnamed and unshamed. But no, honestly, I've got lots and lots and lots of fantastic reviews of the book, and in fact, a lot of people said to me, "When's the next book coming?" So it wasn't until Friday that we actually announced the Kickstarter, because I had kept it secret deliberately, because I think I like these kind of things to be announced suddenly and then better attracts people's interest.
Yeah, unexpected, undetected, right?
Guys, we have a command in chat, !book, that will bring you to David's Kickstarter where you can back his book. The new book is called, I can't wait, this is great. It's called From Vultures to Vampires, 25 Years of Copyright Chaos and Technology Triumphs. So !book in the chat, guys. I also have a timer dropping where you can back David's Kickstarter. It's a quality Kickstarter. You know what, David? I guess the book picks up kind of where Commodore: The Inside Story left off in a way, because in the book Commodore: The Inside Story, you kind of leave off with. We should get into the story a little bit deeper, but you trying to get the rights to Commodore, you lost it to ESCOM, and then you were very discouraged and left the scene entirely. And it seems like this new book kind of picks up where that one left off.
Yes, it's absolutely the truth. As I said, earlier, I didn't really understand that I had enough of my experiences to write a book about. But I, as I just explained, I think I did good justice to the book, bringing us up to where a Commodore the assets were actually sold. And then, of course, after that, I had in my mind absolutely nothing else to say, because I'd been out of the industry for all of those years. I came back and I told my story. End of story. However, since I've been back in the industry, which was really August of 2015, where I was a guest speaker at the Amiga 30 event in Amsterdam, so many people now that I've met, and I've made a big point of visiting as many events around the world as I possibly can, to meet people in person. And so many people have told me stories about what's happened since, and so on and so forth. And then, so not that long ago, I suddenly realized that actually there is a really big story here that is actually waiting to be told, because a lot of what was being reported was just fragments of information. And yet the truth of the matter is that the Commodore assets were bandied around, and people were trying to scavenge what they could, and rip pieces from the core of Commodore and Amiga, getting pieces that they wanted to have, a TM or an IP or a logo or what have you. And it was really it was really a minefield. And a lot of people that were trying to develop new technology were completely discouraged, because if they produced something, before they knew it, they got a cease and desist order coming through the door, or they were threatened with lawsuits. And there were plenty of lawsuits, and some are still current, some are still going on today, which is incredible. So it just dawned on me that this is a story that I think our community, which is an amazing community, let's be honest about it, and it's a growing community every single day as more and more people getting involved. They've badgered me to find out about what's happening. So I have now started the research for that.
Well, David, I think it's an important time to mention that you aren't the sole author of this book. You have a co-author, and your co-author is, I think, one of the most important people in the Amiga community and one of the biggest Amiga fans I've ever met in my life. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your partner in crime?
Yeah, it's Trevor Dickinson, who I met at the Amiga 30 event in Amsterdam, and it was an amazing. We just hit it off instantly. You know how sometimes that happens. It's probably the same as you and Anthony. You meet somebody and you know immediately that you share a DNA. There was something there, and that we just hit it off entirely. Now, I never imagined that I'd be in a position to actually write a book with Trevor. What happened is that once I decided that I was going to delve into the deep and dark past and find out what happened, I wanted to contact all the people that play a significant role in the last 25 years. Anybody who had anything to do, for example, with ESCOM, or to do with Amiga Technologies or Pios, or any of these companies that one after another, or individuals that one after another tried to get hold of, tried to do certain things, or did get hold of and then got rid of quickly. I contacted every single one of them, well most of them. I've still got a few yet to contact, and saying to them, I'm writing a book about this. Would you be prepared for me to interview you about what happened all those years ago, in most cases, and tell the truth? Because what I write in my books is always the truth. I won't bend, I won't change a story. You tell me what it is, and I'm going to print what it is, whether it's good or it's bad. And possibly I might get you videoed at the same time. Every single person that I've contacted, surprisingly, said yes. And I'm surprised about it, because some of these people do not come out very well, but they've said yes. Anyway, one of those people I contacted was, of course, Trevor, because he's A-EON Technologies, and he's been involved with Amiga and subsequent companies all along. And so he got back to me and said, yes, of course, I'll be very happy to. He said, but by the way, I have got an enormous amount of data in relation to everything that happened, more or less in chronological order, that I've been keeping for myself. So why don't we work together? And he said, let's co-author. And I thought, well, this is a fantastic opportunity because he's done all the donkey work from the times when it happened, as it happened. And I'm now reaching out to people currently and getting their opinions from their viewpoint today. So if we add the two together, we take Trevor's his data, and then at the end of what he's written about something, I will then add to it. Well, by the way, that person said this today and that today, and bringing it right up to date gives you a completely good overall perspective of what happened. So it's an absolutely natural thing to do, and I'm thrilled to bits because it's made my job easier.
I think it's a great partnership, and it's kind of like, Anthony's partnership and mine. I'm the video guy, and Anthony is the computer expert, so we make a good team together. So that's a great partnership there. Wow, I'm super excited about the book, David. Do you I kind of want to. I want to do a few things today, guys. I want David to talk about his time at Commodore. I want to continue talk. I want to talk about the transition period, Commodore's death to this big debacle with the copyrights, and of course, I want to talk more about the new book. David, do you want to kind of take a step back? Do you want to kind of start from the beginning, and we can kind of go in chronological order, and then I think that'll be a good place to start. So, David, do you want to tell us a little bit about when you first joined Commodore?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's really. I have to be honest with you. My life has been a roundabout of lots and lots and lots of luck. Most of it good, and some of it not so good. I guess that's similar to most people. But basically, what happened was that I had built a career as a sales. Years and years ago, I was a professional musician. A very different thing from what I'm doing now. I was a professional flamenco guitarist, which is like a little unusual, I guess. But one day, my first wife said to me, "I want you to get a real job, or else," as they do. Anyway, I again a complete and utter fluke. I had no idea. I sat down thinking, "What can I do? What I don't have any skills." I left home when I was 17. I went to Australia on my own, and I just did like any youth. I just did whatever work I could get enough to survive and make sure I had food in my belly and a couple of beers or something. And I didn't have any career at all. So I started thinking to myself, what on earth am I going to do? Now, I'd come back to the UK from Australia when this all happened. And my father, who when he was alive, he was an electronics engineer. And he had bought, while I was away in Australia, he had bought a small business, which was a little retail shop that used to sell small appliances right up to televisions. He didn't do white goods or anything like that, but he used to do a lot of repair work for color televisions, which had just been released at that time, and they were massively heavy things that and very, very unreliable. I'm sure you guys remember that era, or some of you older ones do. Anyway, my father had been I guess you'd say he was I hate the word cripple, but when he was a young man, when I was about 2 or 3, he was on a motorbike and they got sideswiped by a car and his knee was crushed. And in those days, they didn't have artificial kneecaps. So from a very young age, he had a leg that did not bend, his left leg. So I used to go into the shop and help him a couple of days a week just to move televisions and stuff like that around, and we'd have to go out to somebody's house, see if he could repair the TV there. If not, he had to bring it back and stuff like that. And I did that. In all of that, in the meantime, I was teaching guitar at a very expensive public school, and I had about 30 private students, and I was paying at a restaurant a couple of nights a week. But anyway, I'd just been told, get a real job. And I'm in the shop one day, and a guy comes in and he says, "David, will you come and have a coffee with me?" I said, "Sure." He said, it turns out that he worked he was the manager of a company, a finance company, that my father used to use to provide credit terms for people who wanted to buy something on credit. They were called Practical Credit Services, and they were part of the Provident Group. And he just said to me, "Look, David," he said, our business is really flying at the moment, and I need to get myself an assistant manager." He said, "And I'll come into the shop a lot of times when you've been there," he said, "and I just like the way that you are with people." He said, "So would you like the job?" Well, I mean, this is incredible. Can you think about it? 2 or 3 days after I've been told to get a job, right? So I joined Practical Credit Services, and I got into sales and marketing with them. Then I took my first wife to Australia. She was English, but I wanted to take her to Australia. And when I got back to Australia, I joined an incredible company called Charge Card Services Limited. They were 11 banks who got together and produced the first mass market credit card in Australia. This was before MasterCard and Visa were on the scene. And I was one of 4 permanent employees, and it was an amazing job. Basically, when you introduce something like that, I had to go to all the major retailers and sell them into the scheme and how they take transactions, show them how all their staff how to look for fraud and things like that. Anyway, I built a very good career in there. I was there with about 5 years. But then I decided that it was time for me to change from selling intangibles to selling tangibles. So I got a job with 3M Company. And again, that was an amazing job because I joined their consumer products division because obviously my background was selling into retailers. And they said to me, David, we've got 87,000 products. And a lot of them are industrial products, but there are some there that we think could possibly be used as a consumer product. So you are free to find what you can within our product range, come up with a proposal, and if it works, we'll sell them as a consumer product, which you have to admit was an incredible job at the time. And I was there with them for, again, about another 5 years and loved every minute of it. It was really, really good. But one of the things I had to do with them was I had to relaunch their cassette recording tapes. If you remember, Scotch brand tapes were one of the top names. And they were just launching a new product called Metafine, which is a metal particle tape, the first of its kind. And so I did a whole relaunch. I rebranded whole thing. I produced a booklet that we gave away, which was called Scotch Music Tapes, The Truth Comes Out, which is a good strapline. That's what I'm sort of good at, those sort of things. Anyway, what I also did was I did a joint promotions because obviously we were the software of its day with the blank cassette. Then there were the people who made the hardware, the cassette tapes and so on. And then there was a retailer. So what I did was I got together with several of the hardware manufacturers, and then we'd do joint promotions where the 3 entities would share the costs. And it was fantastically successful. The bottom line is that I then got headhunted by Pioneer Electronics, and I was appointed as their Queensland general manager. So I got into electronics that way. Anyway, the time came when we got our first child, and he was about just under 2. We thought, let's go back to the UK. I was actually looking to see if I could get some kind of an international role. So we went back to the UK, and of course, and this was in 1983. And remember, there's no internet. The only before that, I should just mention, I took my wife and son to. We stopped in Thailand and had a couple of weeks holiday together. Then I put them on a plane back to the UK, and I spent the next 7 weeks traveling the world looking for what was going to be the next big thing. So I wanted to make sure that whatever I went into, it was going to be something that had some longevity. And it was during that 7 weeks that I discovered about home computing, and thought, well, I need to get into the computing market, although I knew absolutely nothing at all about computers. So when I got back to the UK, I started scouring. In those days, the adverts were always in the newspapers. On a Thursday, it was full of adverts, and on a Sunday, it was full of adverts. So I'm scouring through the newspapers and looking for anything that had the word computer in it, and then looking at it and then deciding, am I capable of doing this job or not? I wouldn't waste anybody's time. So anyway, I found a couple of jobs that looked interesting. And I got on the phone to this one particular one. And as I remember, I think it was selling computer services. So anyway, I got on the phone, and it took me about 25 minutes to persuade this guy to even give me an interview. This was a recruitment agent.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I persuaded him. Now, this is where the luck comes in, okay? Because I went to London, and as I arrived at this address that he'd given me, I remember there was a lady leaving, and I held the door open for her. I can remember it so vividly. Held the door open for her, and off she went. And I walked in, I went straight in and sat down and had the interview. I finished the interview, and this recruitment guy said, "Well, Mr. Pleasance," he said, "there's no doubt in my mind that this job that you've come for, you could do that standing on your head, but I'm not going to put you forward for it." I said, "Oh, thanks a lot." He said, "No, no." He said, "No, no, hear me out." He said, "The thing is that you've got such an incredible background in the retail that it would be remiss of me as a professional recruitment agent to not utilize those skills." So I got up to leave. He said, "Sit your ass down." He said, I haven't finished with you yet." He said, "Sometimes," he said, "there are amazing things happen." He said, "Did you notice a lady leaving as you arrived?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, she has just given me a brief to recruit somebody for a job that I think would suit you absolutely perfectly." He said, "I've not even had the time to sit down and write this out yet because you saw she left and you came straight in." He said, "But I think this job would be perfect for you." And that was with Commodore.
Incredible.
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's so unbelievable. And he said, what it is, they've got these business products called pets, and they want to open a new avenue. They want to sell their Commodore pets into the retail market. They do not know whether they should get a retail specialist who knows nothing about computers or a computer specialist who knows nothing about retail. And he said, and I told them absolutely frankly, you've got to get a retail expert because you can learn about products, but that industry as a whole. So he said, "I think you're perfectly right for this." So 2 days later, I met with this lady, and Eileen Stroud, her name was. I met with her in a hotel in London. 3 days after that, I'm in front of the then MD, and 2 days later, I'm appointed in that role. So it's incredible to get into Commodore that way. No, it was never advertised.
Literally by someone holding the door for you. But that's what they say is like there's in some ways there's no such thing as luck. I mean, there is luck, but it's all about being prepared when the opportunity comes along. Because that same thing could have happened, but if you weren't ready for that, you wouldn't have been able to capitalize on it.
Yeah, that's very true. Anyway, the interesting thing is that the very first day I started, and honestly I can remember this so clearly, there was a new person in charge of the business systems division, a guy called Mike Tate, and he really wasn't even prepared for me. I walked in and I sat down in his office and said, "What do you want me to do?" And he hadn't prepared anything. And about 2 or 3 minutes later, his secretary came in. Remember, he was new. He'd only just joined the company. His secretary came in, and she was actually Spanish. So I had an immediate connection with her because I'd been studying flamenco and stuff. Anyway, she came in. She said to me, I swear to this is the truth. She said, Mike, she said, I've got to go to the supermarket to get some tea and coffee. What sort of tea do you like? Now, he sat in front of me. He picked up the phone and he rang his wife and he said, "Darling, what tea do I like?" Can you imagine that? I thought, "Oh my God, what have I got here? What a wimp this guy is!" It was incredible. So anyway, cut a long story short, I just walked around the building and I found this guy called John Baxter, who was Commodore's marketing manager at that time. And I went up to John and I said, "John, my name's David Pleasance. I've just started with the company. And that's what you're going for me to do, have you?" He said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have." He said, "There's a big store just opened up, a big computer store opened up on the North Circular Road." He said, "It was a big warehouse. They've turned it into a retail premises." He said, "Go and check them out, see what they're up to, and come back and give me a report." So fantastic. So as God is my witness, I turned up at this place, parked the car. As I walked through the door, the guy said to me, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm David Pleasance and I'm from Commodore." He said, "Oh, Commodore, welcome," and handed me a glass of champagne. and I thought, I'm going to love this job. Anyway, what it was their official open day. And they'd sent Commodore invites, but nobody had answered them. And I just, on the complete fluke luck, went in the same day. Anyway, basically what I did then, because I'd been out of the country for quite a while, I said to Mike Tate, "Look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some research into the retail market. I want to see who are the big boys, who does what, so who would be the right ones to start this project with." So I went to Dixon's and Comet and Curry's and where have you. And after a while, I went to this one group called Lasky's that people probably won't even remember them, but they had 54 shops all across the country. And in 26 of them, they already had a store within a store concept called Micropoint. So they were the most obvious ones to go to because they were actually starting to deal with computers and things. inside, but it was mostly hi-fi. Lasky's never sold white goods; they only sold, televisions and brown goods and stuff like that. So anyway, I went to the head office of Lasky's, met the managing director, and said, "Look, I'm doing some research for Commodore. We want to be able to come back to you with a proposition. Can I have your permission to go and interview the managers of your Micropoint?" Which, of course, I got a written letter from him. Now, I'd done 22 of the stores, of the 26, and I was actually in the 23rd store. I forget how many months this was, probably 2 months. I was in the 23rd store, north of England somewhere. Remember, there's no mobile phones in these days either. So the phone call comes into the shop, and it's Eileen Stroud who recruited me, wanted to talk to me. And luckily, I was in the place I said I was going to be. Anyway, she said, "Look, David," she said, "do you remember when I had the interview with you just a few weeks ago? I told you that things move very fast here within Commodore." And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, it's your star rising." She said, "The Commodore 64 was released a few months ago, just before Christmas, and this is about July, and it's going crazy." So in that department, the consumer division, they need somebody as a national accounts manager to handle all the big stores. And with your background, you're it. So within a few weeks, and she wouldn't even let me go to the next Lasky store to finish my job. I hadn't even had a chance to do that. So I had to go straight back and start as a national accounts manager in the consumer division. So there I was within a few weeks selling Commodore 64s and VIC-20s, of course.
Incredible. That's a heck of an introduction to the company.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing is that, I mean, for me, it was like the most perfect fit. But the guy who I reported to, a guy called Paul Welsh, he was not happy about me being given that job. And I didn't realize that at first, but the reason was that he's a guy that only likes to recruit his own people. But within Commodore, it always was, right from the beginning to the end. Sometimes they would say, if you need somebody, you're not allowed to recruit from outside, recruit from within. And this was one of those occasions. So it was natural that I was, given the job because I had all the experience. They didn't need to go and search for somebody else. But he was not happy because I was given to him. So from that point of view, it was always quite a tough job in some ways. But I'm one of those people, I just get on with what I'm supposed to do and do as good a job as I can. Anyway, not long after that, we had a new managing director came in because Commodore had moved we were in Slough, fairly close to London, and we built a massive big factory and plant in Corby, in the Midlands, and I'd been told I was going to be moved there, and they were going to pay all my expenses and legal fees and all that kind of stuff. So it was a no-brainer for me. But some of the people, including the then managing director, Howard Stanworth, and John Baxter, they did not want to move away from where they were. They'd got children at school and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, there was a new MD came in, a guy called Nick Bessie, who was he was from IBM, from the marketing department. He was a really switched on guy. I mean, I really liked him. He was the right person for that role. But anyway, within a couple of days, he said to me, "David, I want to go out with you for the day and see what you do." Fantastic. So he said, "Be here at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." And I said, "No." I said, "You want to be with me tomorrow? We'll be here at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning because I'm going to see the co-op. They were about a 2.5 hour drive away. I've got an appointment with the marketing director there." So that's what we did. Anyway, on the way he's sitting in my car and he's saying, "All right, what's the lowdown? What's going on? Tell me the truth." And I said, "Well, I can tell you the truth, or I can tell you what I think you want to hear." He said, "No, you tell me the truth." And I said, "Well, the truth of the matter is," I said, "the only problem I've got is my boss." And he said, "Oh, look, everybody says that." I said, No, hear me out. I said, "The problem is that all my customers hate him." And he said, "I think you're exaggerating." He said, "No." I said, "Look, I don't know why, but they just don't like him at all." Anyway, we turned up at the co-op, and as God is my witness, when Peter, the guy at a meeting with the marketing director, came down to the office to sign us in, the first thing he said was, "Hello, David." He said, "You haven't got that bastard Welsh with you, have you?"
Oh my God.
and I swear to you, on my life, and Nick looked at me as if to say, "You set this up." And obviously I couldn't have done. I mean, I didn't even know until about 6 o'clock the night before that Nick was going to be with me. And no way I could have contacted them. And I'd made the appointment 2 weeks earlier. Anyway, so Nick says to Peter, he said, well, do you mind telling me why you just said that? He said, I don't mind telling you. He said, that guy's never going to set foot in this building again. And Nick said, why? And he said, because you guys have agreed to take some stock back from us, which we overordered or whatever. And it was a nice thing to do. And he said, and he's been promising me for weeks and weeks and weeks that he's going to issue a credit note so we can return this stock and get back to normal. He said he was here about 2 weeks ago, and he promised me faithfully that within 2 days I would have this credit note. He said I was on my way into the board meeting. He said, and on his promise, I went into the board meeting and I told him it's all sorted. We'll have the credit note within 2 days. He said, and he's never delivered it. He said he's not setting foot in this building ever again. Right. So anyway, we had our meeting, and then a couple of other places I went with Nick, and before I know it, Nick, on the way back, Nick said to me, look, he said, I'm not allowed to recruit anybody from inside. He said, and so, do you know anybody who you think could do that job? Now, I'd only been there a little while, a few weeks, excuse me, and I wouldn't put myself forward. There's no way. I said, there is somebody. He said, who's that? I said, this guy called Tom Hart. He said, Tom Hart? He said, he's in the finance department, isn't he? I said, yeah. He said, well, why on earth would you recommend him? I said, well, 2 reasons. I said, first of all, he's been with Commodore a long time, and all my customers love him. They trust him. He's 100% genuine guy. I said, and secondly, he and I have become quite good friends, and I know that he would give anything to get into the sales department. So I think he's worth talking. And before I know it, Tom is my boss, and they've got rid of Paul Welsh. I'll come back to Paul Welsh later, right? But anyway, so then on, we grow. Within I think it was about 3 years, I was appointed as sales and marketing director for Commodore UK. We did all sorts of things. All of my marketing activities were clearly seemed to be working, but most of them were anyway. And then I had an opportunity to take on the role. Before that, what happened was another MD came in. What happened with Nick Bessie was at that time he had not only did he have the responsibility for the UK, but he also had what they call this Commodore Electronics Limited business, which was Commodore CEL was the holding company for Commodore, based in Basel in Switzerland, in a particular canton there called Aiche. And they were there because in that place, where your registered office was, you paid zero tax. So anyway, what happened was that I thought that Nick Bessie was handling all those countries. In those days, Australia and New Zealand were part of those companies. And he went over to New Zealand on a trip, and he met with an IBM distributor there, because remember he worked with IBM. This IBM distributor offered him a partnership to go into the business with him. So he quit the Commodore and moved his whole family to New Zealand. For me, it was a valid reason to leave what was a very good job at Commodore. So if we had a succession of sort of temporary people, but then a new guy came in, like I called Steve Franklin. And when Steve came into Commodore UK, he was from the business systems background. And when the first day he came in, he sacked everybody in the business systems division. All the salespeople sacked him and brought his own people in. He did not speak to me one word for 2 weeks, I swear to you. And on the Monday morning, 2 weeks later, he walked in, he said, Pleasance, my office now. Okay. And he said, look, there's no easy way to say this, he said, but if I knew anybody who understood your side of the business, you wouldn't be here today. No, I said, oh, thanks a lot, And he said, no, he said, I've got nothing against you. He said, I don't know anything about you. He said, but I've been brought in here and I've been told I've got to completely change the whole ethos of Commodore UK. To be honest with you, I have no idea why, because I don't think there was anything particularly bad about it. But anyway, he then spent 20 minutes reading off all of his rules and regulations about integrity and honesty and loyalty and everything that I've lived by all my whole life. So when he finished, he said, so that's it. And I said, okay. I said, oh, Steve, I've got no problem with any of that. I do that every day. I said, but I'll tell you what, Steve, I'll make a deal with you. He said, you're in no effing position to make an effing deal with me. I said, now hear me out. I said, I'm going to make a proposition to you that will either, if you give me the guide, will either bring in more business than we've ever seen before, or you'll have cause to get rid of me. He said, what do you want to do? And I said, all right. I said, look over there, and on the desk in the corner of his room was an Amiga 500. And I said, what's that? He said, it's an effing computer. That's what I said. I said, actually, what it is, in all honesty, when you're looking at it, I said, it's a piece of plastic with some keys on it. I said, have you got any idea how difficult it is to market a piece of plastic with some keys on it? Because it doesn't mean anything. It's an inanimate object, and it's, I said, what I want to do, with your permission, that from now on, we don't sell computers, we sell dreams. Exact my terminology. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, right, what I want to do, I want to put a pack together. I want to, have the best, latest software for games, because that's what the kids want. But in the package, we've got to have productivity software like word processing and art and stuff, so that the parent can justify the expenditure. But that's what we do. Now we sell dreams. And from that came the Batman Pact. And I don't know I'm sure a lot of your audience know about the Batman Pact, but how that came about is that I sat down with my team immediately
David,
after that meeting.
can you tell them what the Batman Pact is, just for the folks who don't know?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what it is
Okay.
right now. I sat down with my team and I said, right, what's going to be the next big game? Because I'm a great believer in teamwork. I don't know all the answers, but anyway, we sat down and we thrashed it out, and everybody was in agreement that there was a product that Ocean were about to start to make. They'd just come back, Ocean Software just come back from Hollywood. They'd just paid $1 million for the rights to use the name Batman the movie as a game. So that was $1 million just for the rights. And we all knew that was going to be huge, because that was going to come out at the same sort of time as the movie. Anyway, so I went to see the guys at Ocean Software, the two joint managing directors, David and John. And I said, right, gentlemen, I said, I'm now going to give you a proposal which you will either have the balls to go for, or you'll send for the men in the white coats to come and drag me away. And they said, what do you want to do? I said, right. I said, your game, Batman the movie. I said, when's it coming out? And they said, September, October. I said, fine. I said, right, first thing I want to put a pack together, and I want to feature your product on the pack. Right? The fact that there is an Amiga inside will be almost incidental, because it's your pack that I want to feature. And I said, so what I need you to do, I said, I want you to give me the game exclusively for 2 months in my pack. You cannot buy that game over the counter for 2 months. Secondly, I only want to commit to 10,000 pieces. And thirdly, I don't want to pay you very much for it. At which point in time they said, send for the men in the white coats, obviously, But anyway, they talked about it amongst themselves. David, we've got 3 concerns. They said, the first concern is that we think our dealers are going to be really upset if we give that to you for 2 months. I said, do you know something? I said, you're right. I said, but if this goes the way I think it's going to be, they're going to be upset for only a couple of days. Because I think if this works, they will be selling lots of £400 product instead of lots of £40 product. I know what I'd prefer to sell as a retailer. Okay, I said, fair enough. They said, we've just done our numbers. They said, we've just paid $1 million. We've estimated it's going to cost us $1 million to make the game. And now we've done our sums, and we know how many we've got to sell, not only to get our money back, but to make a profit. And we're afraid that this activity will in some ways affect that number. And I said, well, look, put it this way. I've got a much bigger marketing budget than you have, because mine is based on hardware costs. And I said, I'm going to be marketing in line with you guys. I'm going to do everything. So you have a design for your game. We'll follow that design, working in conjunction with your designers so that everything matches. And I said, this is going to be everywhere. And so they said, okay. Anyway, the net result was that they had the balls to go with it. It ended up that I was right, that their dealers were upset for about 48 hours. And then they started to sell a lot of the Batman packs. They actually did 5 times greater number than they'd ever estimated for that game on its own. And I didn't end up taking 10,000 pieces from them. I ended up taking 186,000 pieces, because that's how many Amigas we sold in the 12 weeks to Christmas.
That's incredible, Dave. What a story. Do you think the Batman Pact is maybe your greatest achievement that you did at Commodore?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, there was lots of smaller ones that collectively were equal, but that one changed the face of computing because not long after that, Sega and Nintendo all started copying, all started putting packs together and all this sort of thing. But we were the leaders of the field, and boy, it just worked. It just worked so well. It was incredible. So from that, I became sales and marketing director, and I thought that Steve, who was the MD, I thought, he's quite a young guy, and there's no way he's going anywhere. If I want to move on, I need to do something different. And the chance came for the general manager's role at CEL, which I applied for and got. And that CEL was responsible for all of the countries where Commodore did not have an operating office. So initially, I was looking after 35 countries.
Wow.
Which I love because I'm a hunter. I'm very much a hunter. I love to have a blank sheet of paper, go and get business. That's what I love to do. Anyway, I did that for 2 years. And then after that, I've been nagging Mediali to let me get into America because US sales were terrible, as I'm sure you guys all live over there.
Yes.
My opinion was that Commodore Inc., the sales division of Commodore America, they were sales prevention officers. So anyway, on January of '92, this is another true story. I swear to you. I was in Frankfurt at a general managers meeting with Mediali, and about 12 o'clock midday, the meeting finished, and everybody was leaving. And he said, "Pleasance, come back here." He said, "Today I'm going to grant you your wish." I said, "What's that?" He said, "I want you to go over to the States. I want you to be vice president over there, looking after the consumer division." He said, "Jim Dion, who's the president of Commodore Inc., he's going to think that you're reporting to him, but you're not. You just make him think that you're reporting directly to me." And he said, "And I want you on the 7 o'clock flight out of London today." This was just at midday in Frankfurt.
That's incredible. Just pick up your whole life and move to the States.
Now, they say sometimes there is a God. He had forgotten because he used to do it all the time. He made me go upstairs to the admin office there and book the flight. But the only thing is that he'd forgotten that the only 7 o'clock flight out of London was Concorde. So I ended up flying on Concorde that same day, which was an amazing thing, really. But anyway, so I flew the same day, and I had to fly to New York and then get over to Las Vegas because it was the winter CES, and Commodore Inc. had got a booth there, and that's where I had to meet Jim Dion. Anyway, I arrived into Commodore Westchester. I think it was about the 7th or 8th of January, something like that. And the first thing I did was to go in and see all the engineers, because I've always been the believer that without the engineers, we don't have a business. And I was absolutely shocked to find, this is January of '92, we had seven Amiga engineers, and we had 40 PC engineers. In January of '92, why in God's name would anybody design their own PCs when they're coming out of the Far East in huge numbers, cheaper and cheaper and cheaper every day? It didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Anyway, get back to my story, and I just didn't understand why we weren't selling anything. So I had a team waiting for me that had already been working with Commodore over there. I think it was 4 salespeople, 3 marketing people, really good people. So I sat them down and we went into private office. I said, "All right, the only thing I ask of you guys is the truth, right? Nothing else, just the truth. What the hell's going on? Why aren't you selling anything?" And they said, "David, we're not allowed to." I said, "What do you mean you're not allowed to?" They said, "Honestly, we're not allowed to sell anything." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "We don't know. We've just been told not allowed." So I said, "All right, I've got to get to the bottom of this." So I said, "Right, starting from Wednesday," Steve Salas was one of my guys, and I said, "Get me in front of Sears," because it was his company he looked after. "Get me in front of Sears. They'll be our first one. I'm going to find out what's going on." So that day comes, I think we're on about the 14th floor of Sears Tower Block in Chicago, and Sears had got about 10 people around this boardroom table, and there's me and Steve walk in, and I introduced myself. I said, hello, David Pleasance from Commodore. I think it was about 9 years or something then. And I said, I'm here to hopefully get some business going within the United States. We're having a lot of success in Europe. And I've decided you're the first customers that I've seen because that's how important you are to us. And I said, I promise you nothing but integrity from me, honesty, and my word is my bond. So can I please ask you just straight outright, why you're not paying your bills? Because they weren't.
Oh, Sears wasn't paying bills.
See, and that's why the sales team weren't allowed to sell anything, because they were owed money. The financial department of Commodore Inc. said these people owe us money. You can't sell them anything else, right? And anyway, and I said, so can you just tell me why you're not paying your bill? And they said, well, it's very simple. They said, we're just waiting for you to take the Commodore to take all our stock back. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well. I said, in the 9 years I've been with Commodore, I've never known us to be a lending library. And they said, and they didn't say a word. They just pushed a letter across the table, the boardroom desk to me, which I looked at this. It's a letter signed by Jim Dion, the president of Commodore Inc., and it's a sale or return agreement.
And that was sale or return of what?
No, that's the whole point. You can imagine what it was. It was the worst possible product you could ever have put into Sears in your whole life. What do you think it was?
Well, 90. Well, that year. I mean, but I would almost say the +4, but that was too early. So I'd have to say CDTV.
You got it. Sears. Now, Sears. Let's be honest about it. Sears, bless them, non-existence anymore, but bless them. Their staff could hardly ring up something and put it in a plastic bag, let alone try and sell something as complex and as futuristic as a CDTV was. Impossible to sell. They should never have been sold in the first place. And every store was up to the gunnels with CDTVs, which Jim Dion had put into all the major stores in the US, not just Sears, all on sale or return, without telling anybody, right? That's why he didn't tell the salespeople, because it would have got out. And of course, he got all of his commission and his bonus by selling all his product, which was never sold in the first place. So I was really shocked, and I was caught, between a rock and a hard place. I didn't know what to do. Anyway, I had to think a bit, and I said, look, gentlemen, I said, the first thing is I gave you my word. We're a company of integrity. I will take that product back from you. It's written in blood. It has to happen. I will do that for you. I said, but to be honest with you, you should never have been sold this product. It was completely irresponsible to do that to you. And for that, I really apologize, because that's not good business. And I said, what you should be selling is what's selling in like hotcakes in Europe, and that's the Amiga 500. That's a perfect product for you guys. And I said, look, I don't really want to start my career in the US with a big negative. It was like, I think it was like over $250,000, I think it was. I said, how about you help me out and I'll help you out. If you give me an order for Amiga 500s to the same value of the product I'm taking back from you, and if you do that, I will give you your own Sears special pack that nobody else in the US has. And they agreed to that. So that same thing happened everywhere. Every company I went to, it was the same deal. So you can imagine, it's no wonder that we weren't selling anything. They'd gone all the channels with stuff that nobody could sell. And but Jim Dion, being the person that he was, he hadn't told his boss. He'd just taken his money and his commission and stuff. And anyway, what happened was that we took all the stock back and we did contra sales of everything. So it was about negative, more or less negative. Now I was supposed to at the quarter end supposed to be with Mary Alley for the quarterly review in Manhattan, but I was on holiday. My two sons had flown over from the UK, and we were on holiday. And I used to have a boat not far from Westchester, and we were down on the boat for the weekend. Anyway, this meeting took place, and of course Betty then saw all the figures for the first time. Well, he picked up the phone. I don't know how he tracked me down, but he did. We did no mobile phones. Anyway, he tracked me down. He said, "What the fuck's going on? This I can't believe it." And I said, "Whoa, slow down." I said, "Why don't you ask Jim, sitting next to you, to give you the letter I gave to him, which he did. And inside was photocopies of every sale or return order that Jim had done for each of these companies. And I said, here's the person you need to ask about it. I said, I've got us trading again. I said, I couldn't have done anything else but honor that what Jim's committed us to. I've got us trading again. Leave me alone. I would love to have been in that room and after I put the phone down.
So he was still the person who made this agreement that Commodore generally didn't do was still an employee at the time when
Yeah, when Mehdi found out, he kept him on.
Really? Wow.
That's.
I mean, worse than that, in my opinion, he should have clawed back all the commission and bonuses that he paid, because they weren't real sales. But you see, let me just give you something that I think your audiences will understand. I knew within a few days, really, well, with a couple of months of being with Commodore in the UK, I knew that they would eventually go bankrupt, and I'll tell you why. 2 reasons. First of all, as a business and as a company, they never, ever, ever had any kind of a business plan. Nothing. They used to stumble from one crisis to the next. That if somebody come along with some idea and they produce something that nobody had asked for, they never came. I mean, what you do, if you've got a company selling hot products, you go to the front line and say, all right, what hot product do you want now? What is the market looking for? What price point do we need to meet? What features does it have to have? Let's get together and see if we can produce this product. Never, never, never did they do that. They would suddenly send you. I remember getting 10,000 plus 4s sent into my warehouse. What the hell is this? Who asked for this? Nobody wanted it. So no business plan of any kind. That's number one. Number two is they never, ever, ever had any external auditing. So every individual subsidiary under the control of either a managing director or a general manager, depending on the structure of that company, they were left to their own devices as to what they can and can't do. So, for example, these CDTVs sold on sale or return, they don't show anywhere. External auditors would have found it in a heartbeat. But because they didn't have external auditors, Commodore financial people didn't know any different. They just presumed that it was sales, and they never had an eye on the books in that regard. So they never really knew how much they were worth. So, and just to endorse how bad it was, not only did Jim Leon do that, but the guy who was the general manager of Commodore Netherlands, a guy called Bernard Van Tienen, he's dead now, but I even so I would have told the story. He used to brag to us every time we got together as a general managers or managing directors meeting in front of Mehdi. He would brag to us, not in Mehdi's earshot, that every single quarter, without fail, when he was down on his targets, as he always was, on the last day of the quarter, he would invent invoices. He would load product onto a truck and send it on a journey for 5 days. So at the end of the quarter, he reports these figures, and 5 days later in the new quarter, they come back in again. And he did it quarter after quarter after quarter. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you that your company that is, as big as it was, it had absolutely no control over its business. No business plan, no auditing leads to what happened. That's absolutely terrible, really.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, a company that size can have no business plan at all and no plan. And you feel that that's ultimately the demise of Commodore, right, David? Because we talk a lot about why Amiga didn't really take off here in the States. Like you guys were very successful in the UK. Amiga was not successful here. So do you think it was purely a management thing, or was there something more to it where like the American culture just didn't pick up on Amiga? They weren't ready for the technology.
No, I don't believe that at all. I believe that the success that we had in the UK by doing those bundles, we appealed to our absolute target audience, and by appealing to the target audience, and you're the same. But why, you ask yourself why, and I asked and asked and asked, why did not Mediati make all of the European subsidiaries follow suit with what we did? Because it was proven. We saw masses of numbers, and they weren't. And from my point of view, it would have been an absolute no-brainer. As we produced a new pack, we wouldn't commit to 10,000 pieces, because if we'd buy stuff for the whole of Europe. We'd be buying hundreds of thousands of pieces and getting a cracking price. when we designed the artwork, we'd design it in multiple languages. When we did an advert for the television, we'd do that in languages. And instead what they did is they gave everybody their own marketing budget, and they all did different things. There was nothing in common whatsoever. So I said to Mehdi one day, I said, Mehdi, I've just been on holiday. He said, yeah, I know that. And I said, I flew from Heathrow and I went to Malaga. I used to have a little apartment in Malaga. And I said, as we arrived at Heathrow, there's a big advert, great big poster sign for Sony with a message. I said, and when we landed in Malaga, there's the same sign in Spanish in Malaga. And I said, that's what we should be doing. We should have, worldwide global marketing with the same message everywhere. And they wouldn't do it. They never, because he didn't understand anything about that kind of business whatsoever. And for me, it was just wasted opportunities.
Do you think they were just inept, or they just didn't care and they were in it for self-profit? Why were they flying the plane into the ground?
Well, I really can't answer that. And to be honest with you, for a long time, I mean, I was very friendly with Irving Gould, who was the major shareholder. I was very friendly with him, and every time I went to Manhattan to the office in the States, which was often, or he'd come to CeBIT in Germany, I always spent time with Irving. And I used to go to him and say, Irving, you've got to check what's going on. And he kept saying, look, I put him in charge. He's in charge. I don't want to know. And I found it really hard to understand. But I guess, I mean, in a way, I suppose Irving, I'm sure he didn't want it to fail, but I don't think he was that bothered. He was a tax exile in 3 countries because he had a place in the Bahamas where he kept his sport fishing boat. He had a place in Canada because he's a Canadian resident, and a place in the States. And he was not allowed to stay in any one place for more than 3 days, which is why he was using the Commodore pet jet to fly all around all the time. But he was an interesting character, and if you don't mind, I'll tell you a little story about Irving that I think you guys will love. I said I got on really well with him, and one day I sat in front of him and I said, Irving, I know this is very impertinent, and if you don't want to tell me that, I understand. I said, but I'd love to know, how did you make your fortune? And I'll tell you the story word for word, right? He said, well, David, he said, I took the best piss of my life. The exact words to me. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, he said, I was in the Four Seasons restaurant having lunch one day. In those days, the Four Seasons restaurant was the place to be in Manhattan, the big place to be seen. He said, and I needed to go to the toilet. He said, so I get up from my table with my guests and I walk into the toilet. And I've only been in there 30 seconds, and a guy comes in, and the guy's saying, I hope you people don't mind language. I've got to tell you the truth. So this guy came in and he said, I can't fucking believe this fucking bloke has done this, and they won't take this, and I'm so upset, and fuck this. And Irving said, well, hang on. He said, settle down, you're so upset. He said, what on earth's wrong? And this guy said, oh, look, he said, I've just brought a fantastic deal to my company's attention, which is just unbelievable, but they've turned it down, and I just can't believe how fucking stupid they are.
Sounds like your position there. Sounds like it's happening to you.
So Irving says, all right, well, look, tell me, what is this thing? And this guy said, well, he said, what it is, he said, you know how these days goods get moved all around the world, and they travel mostly on ships, and they said it's an absolute nightmare, because if you got a ship's hold and you're gonna put down 3,000 tons of grain, you're going to put in barrels of oil, you're going to put in electronics, all in the same hold. It's an absolute nightmare. He said, well, these guys have come up with a system of containerization where they've got 20-foot and 40-foot containers that everything can be stored individually. They've got trucks that move it around. They've got ships that are going to be able to cater for these. So it makes it really, really easy to move goods all around the world. He said, and I brought to my company's table the opportunity for the rights to the USA. He said, and they've just turned it down. And Irving said, well, you just found your man.
He was smart.
And and so he gave that guy, a lot of shares and stuff. But that's how he made his fortune.
That's incredible.
He took the best bits of his life.
Those shipping containers are a major part of the world right now. That's incredible.
Yeah. Every freighter you see has containers on it. They don't fill holds with individual goods anymore.
No, absolutely.
I think most of us see Commodore as Commodore. Like, we knew Commodore just as Commodore. We didn't know about all these sort of separate companies running independently almost. And is that something that's normal for a multinational corporation of Commodore's size, or is that like a little bit weird?
No, it's, if you look at it, it was because they were able to get away with it. It was completely set up for tax purposes. You know, they were a Bahamian registered company, which is why the liquidation was held by a Bahamian liquidator, right? They had CEO, Commodore Electronics Limited, which was the holding company based in Basel in Switzerland, which is where I was for 2 years. I mean, I saw every one of Medi's expenses went across my desk. That was how central that function was. And of course, they were also listed on Wall Street, which is quite a trick. But the whole thing was set up to be tax efficient because in ACE you pay zero tax. And that's why in Basel and in surrounding areas, if you know, there were most of the major drug companies, the medical drug companies are based there because they got protection from being sued up the yin yang for anything that goes wrong with their drugs and so on and so forth. So this was a setup specifically designed. But each individual country, like we were Commodore Business Machines UK Limited, and we were a limited company in our own rights. So when Commodore went bankrupt, we were not part of that. And that's why we managed to retain our entity and we kept running for about 17 months after parent company went bust. Yeah, and every individual was a subsidiary company, and I suppose, and of course, that also allowed them to do the famous transfer pricing trick. You know about that?
What's that?
Well, let me. I'll give you a story, the true story, and then you'll understand why I'm saying this. When Commodore UK finally went under, before they did, Colin Private, who was my co-MD in the UK, we met with Manfred Schmidt, who was the founder and MD of ESCOM, and we sat in front of him. We said, Manfred, we think that you should be buying Commodore UK as a going concern. And he said, why is that? And we said, well, first of all, we're an existing business. You've got all the staff in place. It's a solid business. You don't need to change anything. I said, but what we can offer you is we can offer you £6 million worth of tax credits, right? And well, I'm not sure if he understood that, but but anyway, people outside like you guys would say, well, how come if you're a profitable business, how come you've got tax credits? Well, it's very simple. The way that Commodore used to operate with all of the subsidiaries, and these aren't figures that are necessarily right, but just as an example, let's say Commodore UK would buy from Commodore International an Amiga 500, and let's say we paid our parent company $200 for it, right? We would then have to warrant that product. We'd have to market it. We'd have to make sure that there was VAT paid. We had to make sure there was dealer margin in it, right? And so let's say we sold it for $400, and we would make a profit. But if suddenly we're making a profit so much that we start to have to pay tax to the UK because we're making a profit, suddenly they'd change the transfer price. So it wouldn't be $200 we're paying; it would be $400. So the $200 profit was going directly to the corporation and not to us. But we would be losing money on every one we sold, on paper. That's the transfer pricing trick, and Commodore was very good at that. So we were in a position, we'd had such a huge amount of business, we had £6 million worth of credits. And that would have meant that Manfred Schmidt and ESCOM, as long as they kept our trading name, there's no reason why they wouldn't do, they could have turned over, my guess is 18 to 20 million pounds worth of business without paying a penny in tax.
Wow, that would have been awesome. I mean, Dave, I want to just backtrack a little bit, and then I want to get into the whole demise of Commodore and what happened when you were trying to get the rights to them, because we're talking about ESCOM. ESCOM is ultimately the company that got the rights to Commodore after it collapsed. I want to get into that. But some folks have some really good questions. Amiga Mark is asking, if you had been offered like a higher position within Commodore where you could have influenced the entire corporation, would you have taken it, or do you think it was too far gone by the time you would have gotten that offer?
No, well, no. I mean, the problem is that the man who controlled Commodore and was in control of its demise was Mehdi Ali, and he was ignorant, and he did not want to learn, and he hated being shown up by somebody giving him a better idea than he had. So he was the person. He actually stopped any development. He absolutely stopped it. I mean, obviously we're getting there's many stories I can tell you about Mehdi Ali, that he was the person who virtually single-handedly destroyed Commodore in the last 3-4 years, without any question about that at all. And the only way, I mean, if I'd have been offered, if Irving had offered me the job to get and got rid of Mehdi, yes, I could. I'm certain I could have done lots and lots of things. But I said Irving, for some reason, did not seem that interested.
He was more interested
I,
in keeping Mehdi for some reason.
Now, I would have loved to have done that. I mean, I think people can tell from my passion that we were in control of our business, and I think more than anything else, we were aware. We had our eyes and ears open all the time as to what was going on, and we had all sorts of ideas. And just, I mean, we'll get onto this in more detail, but we would cover Colin and I's business plan, which obviously we attempted to manage and buy it from. And then when I tell you about that, then I think you'll understand that we did really know what we were doing in our business.
It's it's an absolute shame. So I know you're one of the things that I read in your book, the first book, that really resonated with me is how you got the Amiga into not just in like major retail stores, but you got into a wholesaler, which allowed you to get it into smaller boutique shops, because you really understood the power of the community, and that these small shops were meeting places for the Amiga community, and they could explain to people what this Amiga is because it was so different, and the Amiga community was built through that. I thought that was a really, really genius idea.
Yeah, well, again, there's another story there, which I think your audience will love. I have always believed that. Remember, my father had a small shop, and he was an electronics engineer, and he knew so much about the thing he was doing, and I've always felt the same about the small independent dealers. It's their lifeblood, and they live and breathe things, right? And so they are people that are capable of dealing with more technical issues, and therefore giving much better attention to the end user. Now, I'll just get back to that story I was telling you about when Paul Welsh was my boss when I first joined the consumer division in the UK, and he left Commodore, he got fired. He ended up, long story short, he ended up working for Atari. And of course, because he'd already, he and I had not got on very well, when we suddenly got the Amiga 500, it was my opportunity to show how you can outmarket and outsell your competitor. And because Paul Welsh was was my competitor, I really went for it. So what I did was we set up, I think we had 5 independent distributors, and they each had their own clients, and they of course handled those independent distributors' finances. Commodore was not in a position to deal with thousands of invoices, so that's why we had 5 distributors. Now I deliberately appointed Silica Distribution, SDL, because they were Atari's only distributor, right? The other distributors, there was none of them that had Atari. So I deliberately employed SDL as one of my distributors. And so when we actually launched the 500, what we did was I put together a marketing promotion based completely and only around the independent dealers. So I went to each of the 5 distributors and said, right, I give you a certain amount of money for a promotion each year. This year, I'm going to give you X amount for your normal promotion, but I'm going to give you this portion of it, and I want you to match that portion of it for this special promotion that we're going to do. What's that? And I said, what we're going to do, and it's very, really sort of old-fashioned, but we're going to give every single Commodore product a certain number of points. And then, as your dealers, independent dealers, sell each of those products, they will accrue a number of points. If they reach a certain number of points, we are going to take them on the best holiday of their life that they've never seen before, right? And the first one that we ever did, obviously with Amiga being a Spanish name, there was no point in going to Spain because everybody went to Spain. It was de rigueur. So I said, what we're going to do, we took our dealers to Mexico City and then Acapulco. Right, it was the first trip ever. It was 8 days, and it was absolutely laid on. It was magnificent. I mean, in Acapulco, we stayed in the Acapulco Princess, which in those days was in the top 5 hotels in the world.
Wow.
Right? And I'm not kidding. We laid everything on. It was absolutely the business. And I think from memory, there was about 36 or 37 dealers came on that trip. And of course, when they got back, as soon as they got home, they told all their friends who were dealers who hadn't made it, said, "Oh, you don't know what you missed. This was something special." So then we did another distributor with a different venue, and another, and so on and so forth. And the bottom line was that any time anybody went into independent dealers and said, "I want an ST," they said, "No, you don't. This is what you want. You want an Amiga, right?" And we killed the ST entirely just by doing that promotion.
Wow. That's incredible. That's amazing, David. Yeah, it's so funny because the interaction between consumer and like Anthony and I used to go to a store called Software Link, and that was like the meeting place for all of us. And like Atari just didn't have that community. You know, like you could buy the Atari in the local Toys R Us, but there weren't really Atari shops around, and that was the difference for me getting the Amiga like over an Atari.
Yes, I understand that.
So David, well, this is really amazing. I'm loving your stories. I know a lot of these stories are told in more detail in your first book, in Commodore: The Inside Story, and these are amazing to hear. But you know, I respect your time a lot, so I want to get into the kind of the sad part. You know, Commodore failed for a variety of reasons that you outlined. Commodore goes bankrupt. Commodore UK, which you're managing, is still actually making a profit, and it comes time to sell the rights to the Amiga. And you're at an auction in New York City. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. The situation was that Colin and I we worked very hard for several months putting together a business plan, which, even if I say so myself, this business plan was absolutely out of this world. So much so that we were able to raise $50 million in investment in 94.5. Now, you try and getting $50 million today. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The reason was that we knew exactly what we were going to do, how we were going to utilize the assets of Commodore for the betterment of the long-term Amiga. And the $50 million that we raised, we were working with a company called Coopers and Lybrand, who were accountants that had a specialty division that worked with people wanting to do management buyouts, and they'd got a fabulous reputation for doing so. They brought investors into us, and our investment was made up of, I think there were 3 wealthy individuals. There was one guy who represented a small consortium of investors, and between them, they were putting in 25 million. The other 25 million that we raised, and which is the number that we needed, was coming from a company called New Star Electronics, who were a Chinese manufacturing company who, up until that time, in fact, even during that time, they had been making Sega and Nintendo products without a license and selling them into China in big numbers. But their government, the Chinese government, had told them, you've got to get legitimate, because China wanted to join GATT and all this stuff, right? So anyway, we met with these guys, and for us that would have been the most perfect solution, because we had, if 50% of your investment is a manufacturing company that you knew not only would they make good quality products at low cost, they were a partner in your business, so they were going to make sure that you got the best possible deal. So from our point of view, that was the most fantastic outcome. Now, what happened is that just under 2 days before the auction in New York, and we were all ready to bid, ESCOM, via this guy called Petrodichenko, who I've known for a long time, was a liar and a cheat. They stole New Star Electronics away from us. They lured them away by telling them that they were going to give, you don't have to pay 25 million, we'll do you a much better deal than that, la-di-la-di-la. So suddenly we are left with only $25 million. So people said to us, well, so what? You know, the assets went to 14 or 15 million. The truth of the matter is, nobody who supplied Commodore components in the previous time would give us credit terms. They'd just been burnt big time by Commodore, and they were going to insist on cash up front. So Colin and I had sat down and we did the numbers, and Colin's a genius at these things. Excuse me. And we worked out it would take us 7 months and 3 days to be in a position where we would have earned the right to start getting credit terms and therefore be self-sufficient. So we knew, yes, we had 25 million, but let's say we paid 15 million for the assets, which is probably what it would have been $1 million more than ESCOM. We knew that within a few weeks we'd be broke because we didn't have enough money to maintain the business. So we decided not to bid. Excuse me, guys. So that's how we got cheated out of it. And as I say, for us, it was an absolute nightmare to consider that we'd done all the work because our business plan was incredible. Just to give you an outline of the kind of things that we plan to do, and I think most people will get a good understanding of this, is that from my point of view, Commodore and CBM, those names were royalty givers. We didn't want to do anything with those names ourselves. We wouldn't make anything, we wouldn't produce anything, we wouldn't sell anything. But they're an ideal vehicle for people wanting to bring consumer electronics and get them into Europe with a brand name that people recognized. So our plan was that we were going to offer the Commodore names particularly to Chinese manufacturers, but not necessarily, for something like a 2.5% or 3% royalty charge on top of their wholesale price. So the idea would be, let's say you've got Honky Conky Tonky making electric kettles, right? And they wanted to sell those electric kettles into the European market. Nobody would buy Honky Conky Shonky as a name, right? But if you offer them the right to use the Commodore name, right? And all we would have to do in order to maintain that was to set up our own quality control department to make sure that anything that they sold into the market met the requirements of quality and safety and all that kind of thing, right? So that every single time one of those products was sold into the European market, we'd collect a royalty for it. Now, that could be huge numbers because anything with a plug on it could be sold as a Commodore branded product at that time. I mean, Europe Commodore was a standard name that everybody understood. I mean, a friend of mine a long time ago, he bought the Bush name after Bush had gone under. And they used to make Bush radios and televisions, and they went under. He brought it back and reintroduced it, and he's doing incredibly well now. So that was what we would have done with the Commodore name. With CBM, it would have been exactly the same thing, but with PC manufacturers, because the name CBM at one time was as viable as IBM. So that would have been another revenue stream coming in that we have nothing to do with financially, but would be bringing in as a revenue stream. And again, we have to make sure that the quality control is right. Now, not only could we say that, okay, there's a 3% royalty, we could also go back to the same people and say, okay, now you've got your product, you've got it branded with Commodore or CBM. How about you use our sales teams, which we've already got, to sell those products into this market, for which we get commission. So we would end up getting commission and revenue coming in from something that we have nothing to do with except take the order and collect the money. I mean, that's a very compelling business model, however you look at it. As far as the Amiga was concerned, we would do that, but only with things like clothing, fashion clothing, because Amiga was a good name for that, and we would do the same thing royalty-wise with them. But our plan then was, so we have nothing to do with manufacturing anything other than Amiga, okay? Now, we also knew that Amiga had a limited lifespan in the classic vein. So what we did, we went to a German company that we met with, and we had designed a special tower case that was designed to our specifications. And the idea was that through these independent retailers who we have so much regard for, we were going to offer an upgrade service, so that if you had a 500 and you've got an external drive or whatever, but you wanted to upgrade, you could go and get one of these tower cases, and then they'd take your motherboard and they'd reuse that. You would buy another motherboard, 1200 or 1000 or 2000 or whatever it was, and then you would build up your computer and you would let it grow with you as and when you could. Now, in order to support that, we were going to make PCBs available on their own. Okay. Now we call this whole program Amiga Infinity, and that would have given us a longevity for quite some time. We also planned to produce an Amiga on a PC card, and a PC card to go into Amiga, because those are things which there was a need, an opportunity for. In the meantime, we were going to be taking the new technology, which ESCOM had completely ignored in their stupidity, which was the project they called codenamed Ombre, and we were going to develop that product into a brand new Amiga line, which would not be backwards compatible because it was so far advanced it couldn't be. And you don't want to hang on to the tails of your old technology forever. So we were going to develop a new product range based around the Ombre chipset. So that was basically our business plan, and it brought in a huge amount of revenue. I don't know what your audience think of that, but can you see why people were quite keen to invest in us?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, where was a lot of people talk about, what Amiga could have been, like, what if Commodore didn't fail? Do you think Ombre was one of the points forward into the future of Amiga? And what exactly was Ombre? What did we never get to see?
Right. I do believe that Ombre definitely would have been successful because, in my opinion, it's the best technology I've ever seen, and I've not seen anything today that comes close to what this could do. Basically, I was shown by Dr. Ed Hepler, who's the guy who actually designed the whole concept. And I met him, actually, Bill, you don't remember when you and Anthony, we met in Philadelphia?
He was there.
Ed Hepler was there.
Yeah.
And he absolutely was destroyed. He was destroyed, man, because he thought this product was so good, but it had been ignored. And so. But anyway, basically, what Ombre was, he took a basic HP RISC core, to which they added a 3D rendering engine, a chunky planar, blitter. It had 5.1 surround sound stereo built in, which was the state of the art in '94. And I'm not kidding, it was absolutely sensational what it could do. Absolutely sensational. And, the ESCOM boys, they didn't even look at it. And, they let everybody go. They didn't retain anybody from the Amiga team. What does that tell you about what their intentions were with Amiga? I mean, I never understood it because I honestly believe what they really wanted, what they needed, and what could have done a lot with was the Commodore and the CVM names. But anything to do with the Amiga, which was really, it was not even part of their DNA. But they just had a spite. They just wouldn't. And we said, let's buy it on its own, but they wouldn't sell us.
But I don't think, did ESCOM actually even do anything with the Commodore name? Because I recall Tulip coming out with Commodore stuff. I don't know if that was after. I mean, I know. So ESCOM buys bankrupt Commodore in '95, and then in '96 goes bankrupt. Mm-hmm. And all they managed to do is make an Amiga corporation that sells 1200s and 4000s.
The 4000T, right?
Yeah, the tower. Yeah. And they do nothing with the Commodore name as far as I could tell, except kind of sell it to Tulip, who was going to make PCs with the Commodore name, or that was after ESCOM went under. That's where I'm hazy. I don't remember if that was part of.
And David, is this kind of the topics where your new book picks up?
Yeah, I was going to say that's where the new book comes in, right? Mm-hmm. We picked the new book up. Starts from the actual auction day where I was physically at in New York, and I was physically being sick because we knew we had to phone our people in the UK who stalwartly stood by us for months and months, and just say, guys, we can't even bid, and that was heartbreaking. I didn't actually do it. Colin and I tossed a coin for it, and I won, and Colin had to go and tell the staff, which was an awful thing to do. But no, that's where we get into the realms of the new book, because I'm charting what happened, time after each particular one. But what I can say is that I do understand from a little bit of research I've got that ESCOM actually did produce some PCs with CBM on them. But my thought about what they were going to do, which I thought would have been a good idea, was to keep the ESCOM name as their low-end PC, and then put CBM out as a higher end with a higher spec, and therefore you get more margin on it. I don't think they had enough time to do any of that. The simple reason is
they had 1 year, yeah, and then they went out of business. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what they did was they overstretched themselves because they didn't know. First of all, I question even why in '95. Why would you manufacture your own PCs in '95? It doesn't make any sense. They should have been buying them and badging them. But then they had to make their mind: are they a manufacturer, or are they a distributor, a wholesale distributor of their own badged product, or are they a retailer? They bought the whole chain of retail shops. They bought the ex-Silica SDL shops, and they bought the old Rumbelow shops. I think something like 150 stores in total. And if you don't know what you are, it gets back to the whole thing about not having a business plan. So they overreached themselves. And then I think what they saw that they had a chance to get something out of the Amiga, so they set up Amiga Technologies, and for a while were funding Amiga Technologies. But it was being run by Petr Tichenko, who is a buffoon, and no wonder that that didn't go very well. They made all sorts of mistakes, and then ultimately ESCOM go bust, and then the assets go up for highest bidder, and that's where my book comes in, because I'm going to tell. I mean, I can't tell you off the top of my head now the whole chronological sequence, although I've got a fairly good idea. But basically, it went from one to another. All with different ideas. Some of them pretty good, and some which were completely.
Well, I can fill in a little bit, because Gateway buys Amiga, only Amiga though. The Commodore stuff goes off to, and I'm guessing that might be when Commodore goes off to Tulip. And I think I know there at some point there was something called Commodore Gaming, which, as you said, I mean, your whole plan, you said what would work for them was use Commodore's name for your high-end PCs, and Commodore Gaming was that. I mean, gaming PCs are, that's Alienware. That's high-end PCs, and you had Commodore Gaming briefly, and they also, your other plan, which was to put the Commodore logo on consumer electronics, and we actually saw that with Commodore branded MP3 players, which were out there for a little while. You had Commodore branded cell phone. Of course, most of us in the States never really saw any of that. So Gateway buys Amiga, and then sells Amiga. Oh, and you have a Commodore cell phone. There you go. Yeah, I've never seen one. Saw any of that in the States. I have a few of the MP3 players that I managed to pick up. Well, Gateway sells Amiga to Amino, and in amongst all of this, you have, Hagen Partner come out with 3.5 and 3.9 OS, but then Hyperion is tasked with coming out with 4.0, if I'm not mistaken. I've never been a huge follower of 4.0. You have the former kind of Phase 5 guys who come out with Morphos that's Amiga-like. Then you have Cloanto ending up with the license to sell, apparently, the 3.x operating system, which of course puts them at loggerheads with other companies. I mean, you have a lot of, it's like a pretzel. And what amazes me is, so now you already know that you're not going to be able to, you are able to purchase Commodore, but you know that it would be irresponsible to do so, because you're just going to lose people money. But you still end up going to the auction anyway?
Yeah, because Commodore UK was not included in the auction. And I had to be there to represent Commodore UK in case somebody had an interest in it. And but to be honest with you, the atmosphere wasn't right for us to even kind of bring that into the table. And to be fair, the Bohemian Liquidators, they were fed up with the whole thing. It had taken so long. I think they didn't realize just how much was involved in the liquidation, how complex it was. And certainly they just wanted to, that's why when Dell came in with a higher offer, but Dell said we need 30 days to do our due diligence, and the liquidator said no way, it's get sold here today at now, end of. So just one of those moments, but that's why I was there. And of course, remember, we had planned up to the 2 days before, we'd planned to actually be in a position to bid and buy. Didn't know that we were going to get New Star Electronics stolen from us. That was
and we talked about this convoluted business where you had all these separate entities, along with Commodore International and along with the Bahamian company and all this stuff. Is that part of why liquidating Commodore kind of was so complicated and took so long?
Yeah, because some of these patents and trademarks and things were held in some of those subsidiaries. You know, Commodore Netherlands, for some reason, had quite a few things that were part of their assets, and they had to be kind of extracted, and that had to be done in conjunction with the Dutch liquidator. So that's just an example of all the things. But you also got to remember that, as I alluded to earlier, because Commodore had no independent auditing and so much cookie was going on, one of the biggest problems was the things that Bernard Van Tienen, who is now dead, he became part of the ESCOM directorship, which tells you immediately that they're bent. One thing that your audience might like to know, Colin and I, we had to go and talk with the Dutch liquidator about something, nothing big, but it was something that we shared something with the Dutch company, and we had to just go and meet up with him and decide how we were going to deal with it. No problem at all, very friendly. Anyway, while we were with him, he said, "Oh, gentlemen, what do you think of this?" And he, just like in the Sears, he pushed a piece of paper across the table to us, and we looked at it, and it's an expense claim from Bernard Van Tienen, and it was for services at this place called A-EON, which apparently was the most high-profile brothel in Amsterdam, right?
Wow.
And this was expenses for $275,000.
Wow.
That's a lot of action.
That's a long meeting.
Yeah.
You could say that was not a business that was in and out.
I think there was a lot of in and out.
So did each of these entities have to be so that Commodore UK is still in business a year after Commodore's gone bankrupt?
Yep.
Did each of these other, like this Netherlands and all these ones, did they all have to get liquidated separately, or did they get rolled into?
Well, the thing is, is that because they were not financially strong, they had no choice. Their head office is gone, no product coming through. They couldn't survive. Nobody was getting paid, so they just liquidated. And we were in a position where we were able to buy all their stock. We managed to get first option on their stock, because we gave them a wholesale price for it. It was good for us. So that's one of the reasons why we were able to keep on trading is because we bought all the stock as they closed down.
So then because obviously you can't get it from Commodore International anymore.
No. Yeah.
Everyone, thank you for joining the stream today. If you are just joining, we have the pleasure to have David John Pleasance on as our guest. He is former managing director of Commodore UK, and he has a brand new book out. It's called From Vultures to Vampires, 25 Years of Copyright Chaos and Technology Triumphs. And interviewing him with me is my partner in crime from the Guru Meditation, Anthony Becker. And David has given us this incredible history of his time at Commodore. And now we're kind of getting into the sad part when Amiga and Commodore died and the vultures are swarming. If you'd like to, David has a brand new Kickstarter for his book. If you would like to back the Kickstarter, I highly recommend you do. His first book is incredible, and you can hear that David has got lots of juicy stories, and he doesn't pull any punches, man. He says it all. You can do !book in the chat, and that will give you a link to his Kickstarter. David, thanks again for coming here today. This is amazing.
And I want to say, I mean, if you look at, you can't, I mean, obviously a webcam is not going to do justice to the beauty of his first book. I mean, the binding, I mean, look at that. Look at that. How can you, let me try not to have too much glare on it. I mean, anybody who can put this much into just the cover is so Amiga. It's a beautiful. It's almost a piece of art in and of itself, just like our machines are.
Oh, thank you for that. I must say that I put a lot of work into that, but it wasn't only me. I work with a guy called Paul Kitching. He does fantastic graphics work, 3D rendering and stuff like that. A lovely, lovely man, part of my team. I work with Amiga Marcel Frankenet, and we all worked on the design of it. And also Wayne Ashworth, who's another fantastic artist. Wayne actually did the picture of the Commodore building on the front of the book, which, of course, we didn't have a proper photo of, and it's not the same anymore. So he actually replicated it from a bad photo. And actually, they're all working with me now. I haven't worked with Marcel yet on the cover of the new book, but if you have a look at the artwork for the new book, it's with Paul and with Wayne and myself, and we actually take a pride in it. For me, it's like having a baby. It's got to be right when it comes out in every way possible, and I think it's an indication of the depth of passion, not only from me but all the people that I work with. The passion is so great that I've just got to do my best to feed that passion as best I can.
So, what did you learn from the first book? I think it makes you feel, I'm guessing, hopefully more confident about doing the second book.
Oh, totally. I mean, I was badgered into doing the first book because, I've never considered myself as being any kind of an author, but because every meeting I went to, and I have to say, being in this sort of special position that I found myself in as a complete surprise after 25 years of not being involved in the industry, everybody wanted to come and say hello to me, ask me for my autograph and things like that. And they're confiding in me stories that obviously I didn't know anything about, particularly in the last 25 years since I left Commodore. And but because I was being badgered, they said, you tell such great stories and you tell them with passion and conviction, which I know it's true because it is all real for me. You really should produce a book. So eventually I conceded and decided I'll write a book. So I started writing, and what I found was that I'm reporting every single thing that happened to me that I can remember, of course, and I reported exactly as it happened. When I met Mediali over this, who was involved, what was said, what the outcome was, and all these kind of things. And when I read it all back, I was disappointed because to me it read like it was a book about David Pleasance rather than a book about Commodore. But then I thought to myself, well, actually, it can't be any other way because these stories are all from my ears and my eyes, and that's what I've recounted. But I wasn't satisfied with that, so I then invited other people from within Commodore, very high-profile people, to write their own chapters about it, no holds barred. And obviously, there's people like Dave Haney, there's people like Gail Wellington, R.J. Michael, Beth Richards. Most people don't know Beth. She was the lead engineer producing the CD 1200 project, which never got released. And hers is an interesting chapter because she writes a chapter about all of the ideas that were put forward and how little was actually produced, which is very typical of the truth within Commodore. So anyway, so when I ended up finishing the book, and it's 368 pages, it's 90,000 words, and I was really thrilled to bits with it. I love it. I think I've done justice to my position in writing about the product and the community that we all love. But then I thought, well, that's it. That's me done. Since then, of course, everybody who's bought the book, and I've got to be honest with you, I've not sold one book through a bookstore. Every book I've sold has been sold directly, except for I was working and still am with Amiga Kit, and they were supplying it to their customers direct from their warehouse. But virtually everything else I was shipping out myself, and I signed every book virtually, except the ones from Amiga Kit. But everybody that's had the book, I've had nothing but fantastic critiques about. And then people have said saying to me, when are you going to bring another book out? When are you going to bring another book out? And I didn't really think there was anything more to tell because I was not involved. So then I start thinking, well, actually, there's a lot of stories that people are telling me about what happened after ESCOM, and there seems to be quite a lot of information there. So I started looking into it a bit because I didn't know it wasn't something I was reporting from a personal point of view. And I thought, yeah, there's a lot of information here, and some of it's really on the edge, and some of it's funny, and some of it's terrible. So what I did was I decided to contact, I just sent an email out to probably about 30 emails, I think I sent out to people that were prominent in these things, people that were involved in trying to buy or get TMs or get IPs or logos from what was available. And so I contacted them and said, look, I want to write a story about all of this. And would you be prepared for me to interview you now, possibly even with being filmed, and you telling your side of the story, so that what I end up with is what was written down historically, and then with my viewpoints. But anyway, so I just sent these emails out. Every single one I sent an email to has come back and said, yes, we're prepared to do it. And one of those was to Trevor Dickinson, of course, who A-EON Technologies. And he wrote back to me and he said, Dave, as a matter of fact, he said, I've got a massive amount of data that I have personally collected, more or less in chronological order, about all of these things. He said, I was actually thinking of publishing it myself, but how about we co-author this book? And for me, that was like, this is a gift from heaven. So that what we're going to do now is I'll take each of his stories, which he documented at the time, and then in front of the people today say, what are your thoughts and your rationale for what happened and so on. And then so we have a perspective which was done from at the time and a perspective from right now today. And I think that is going to make it a really interesting read, and hopefully there'll be some juicy bits in there. So that's why I'm co-authoring with him. And the reason I called it From Vultures to Vampires is that in spite of all of the terrible things that went on, and there was a lot of terrible things went on, a lot more than Trevor alludes to. Trevor says, oh, it wasn't as bad as that, but I know it was. A lot of things went on. People were trying to develop something and then being sent a cease and desist order, or you'll be in court. And remember, some of these court cases are still going, still current, right? So the reason because I could see that there was people, as soon as they saw something was becoming available, just like Vultures, they were trying to get pieces of the carcass and pick it up, mainly I think for greed, for being able to profit from. If I own this TM, I can make money out of it. Don't know quite how, but I'm going to do so. Not that many wanted to buy the assets for the right reasons, the reasons that we'd all like to see them bought. So I thought, well, they are vultures during that time. But in spite of all of that, we now have some incredible technology that's been developed. And for me, probably the most, my favorite technology at the moment is the Vampire, particularly the standalone 4 Vampire, because it is a sensational product. And so it just made perfectly good sense for me to write a book called From Vultures to Vampires.
Well, I think the name of your new book, I mean, your Commodore the Inside Story is almost like making a movie about the Titanic. You know how it ends, and it ends on a down note.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this new book, which starts on the down note, but we're seeing, even with all of these problems, even with all of this vulturing, this sort of picking at the carcass, anytime, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but what I seem to see a lot of is anytime someone goes to make something, it almost seems like there's a bunch of hands. The bird starts to fly out of a nest, and the rest of them are trying to grab its legs to, like, if I can't get out of the nest, you can't either. I'm gonna pull you back down in here with me.
Exactly.
But we still get a vampire that I think anyone can agree. I don't own one yet. I helped my brother put his in a 600, and that I think got me a little more interested in it, just actually seeing the product and seeing it plug into an Amiga, I was almost kind of like, wow, this is actually a pretty neat thing that I might want to get myself. It's and seeing all these other new things, the terrible fire, all this outside of the people who are trying to buy it, who are trying to do it. All these people are saying, like, it's almost like they're saying, is we're going to do this anyway because we love this thing.
Yes, you're right, and that's I think it's a story that the community is really gagging to find out the truth about. And that's why I am very bullish about this book. I really think it's going to do very, very well indeed, but only because the story deserves it. I just hope that I can do justice to the story. I'll certainly give it my best, and I have evidenced what I can do with the first book. I want to maintain that standard. I mean, it's very difficult. We launched a Kickstarter on Friday, and I've had to put in the Kickstarter. I can't tell you how many pages this book is going to be. I can't, but what I can promise you is that it's going to be at least the same quality as the one that you've already seen, because I believe in quality of anything. I don't know how many pages it's going to be. It might be less, it might be more, but I've also had to guesstimate what it's going to cost to ship the product, because you don't even know the weight. See, when I first started Commodore: The Inside Story, I thought my book would end up being quite substantial and be less than a kilo in weight. But in fact, it's over a kilo in weight. So every single postage shipping cost I put on a Kickstarter is completely blown out of the water. It costs more to ship, but I can't get any more money because I'm not looking to make money out of shipping, but I don't really want to lose money either. Mm-hmm. So it's really saying, look, I want you to invest in me, and yes, it's a risk, but you've seen what I've delivered before. I promise you I'm going to deliver at least as good, hopefully better, but it's still an unknown quantity.
And are you feel better able to make those estimates now? I mean, you make a quality book. This is a heavy book. It's heavy. The paper's heavy. And the color printing, I'm sure. I mean, the vibrant colors. I love. I mean, I think anything with Commodore, anything with Amiga, even though the Commodore PET was black and white, color is certainly a big part of it. I mean,
yeah, and I can also tell your audience that the guy who actually did all the layout for the book, Simon Busby, he's doing the new book as well. I mean, I'm a great believer, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I've said I've got the team around me with Paul Kitching and Wayne Ashworth and Marcel Frankenay and Simon Busby. So they're the team that produced the first book, and I was thrilled to bits with it. So why not keep them? And they love working with me. Don't know why, but there you go. So again, it is a commitment to potential purchasers that their money will not be wasted. I'm very confident of that.
David, I can tell you, the Amiga community is filled with tons of passionate users, and I have a lot of them coming to me, and I'm telling you, they are extremely frustrated. The Amiga community feels like all of the copyright issues have really stunned the growth of Amiga. In some cases, people have given up on the growth of Amiga, and they're investing more. They have more hope in things like the Vampire, or they also have hope in things, like new accelerators for the Amiga, and they're getting more interested in they're thinking the future of the Amiga is maybe making their classic Amigas better and more powerful. People are starting to make games that run incredible games that you could never imagine before, like run on an Amiga 500 with 1 megabyte of RAM. So I feel like a lot of the some of the most incredible people in the Amiga community are really discouraged about the whole copyright situation, and they see a bleak future for next generation Amiga. They're more into reinvesting in the classic machines. Is this going to be a topic that you touch on in the book as well?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I'm going to add 2 chapters into the book. One is significant figures within the Commodore story, and where they are now, because there's a lot of people that figured very heavily in the early days, and some of them have got incredible positions, and some of them are retired, some of them are dead. But so that will be a significant figures, and where are they now? I think people will find that interesting. The other thing I'm going to do is my vision for the future. And I've got some very specific ideas about what I think should happen, how it should happen, and when it should happen. And I'm going to be putting it in the book in a way that is just inviting either endorsement or being attacked, because the vision that I have about how we can take our community to another level. That is something that I'm keeping very much to myself until the book comes out. But it is, I mean, what I'm saying is that I appreciate, and probably as well as anybody in the community, I've got an amazing understanding of Commodore and its history. Although I make it very clear that I was not around Commodore when Tramiel was around. I met him once for about 2 minutes, and that was it. But I've got a very good in-depth knowledge of the part of Commodore that our current community are involved and in love with. And I think I'm in a position where I have a right to at least have a vision, even if it doesn't transpire. But certainly that's going to be part of the book.
I'm really excited to hear that, because especially it's very interesting to me because your co-author Trevor Dickinson, who I think is an incredible person. Like, he is one of the people who's trying to push Amiga forward, and Anthony and I saw his A1222 years ago at VCF Southeast, and he was ready to go with it. And I don't know why we haven't seen it yet, and I have a hunch it could be because of some of these copyright issues, and I know it's frustrated a lot of people. They've been waiting for things like the A1222, and they're frustrated, they're sad, and they're losing hope. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this book. Like, do we still have hope for like a next generation Amiga, or is the copyright stuff just too fragmented and too broken to be fixed? A lot of people are saying things like, we love the Amiga ones, but they're using PowerPC. It's hard to get people to invest into PowerPC. So there's a lot of like big issues to deal with in this book.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, interestingly, I'm pleased that you mentioned the A1222, because anybody who bought my book knows that I actually ran a free. Anybody who backed the Kickstarter for the first book, we offered a prize, and that was an A1222. That has still not been delivered to the winner, which in a way I'm embarrassed about. But winner, a very nice guy, a Canadian guy, understands. It was some issues with software compatibility, which I believe they have now resolved. I think it's very, very close to being released. I hope so. But in the new book,
good news.
Yeah. But in the new book, there is another prize, random prize, and that is a standalone Vampire 4. So, I do like to try and put these things in. I think it ties in very well with the theme of the book. And as of this moment in time, I think that the Apollo team have produced what is, for me, the most exciting technology. And again, we can come back onto that whenever you want. But so that's why, for me, it's good that I know that the book is going to end up on a high. And that's it. So.
Oh, that's kind of what I like about the idea of it. I don't want to ask you, obviously, details about your vision. We want people to back your book so that we can read it in there. I just want to ask you, in this environment, knowing what you know, knowing what we all know about, and it almost seems, it can almost feel like there's a kiss of death. ESCOM buys Commodore and goes out of business. Tulip, I don't even know if they're in business anymore. Gateway buys Amiga, they end up having to sell out to Acer. They start this other company. They release this Amiga development environment at some point in all that, which was based on QNX. QNX ends up getting bought by BlackBerry, and we all know BlackBerry is kind of floundering around in the ocean. Their phone business is kind of by the wayside as well. And then we see all this other stuff between Hyperion and Haga Partner and Cloanto and all these people. Everything's all over the place, so who knows who has what, and everyone's fighting. Do you feel that there's a chance this vision could happen in this environment?
Absolutely do. Because I've met the current situation with disputes. I've met most of those people, and I know that they are all they're all fed up. They want this thing settled one way or another, and I think that there is compromise about to be made. I certainly hope so. I believe in that. But see, with or without those things, the future of one thing people have got to get their heads around: there will never be another Amiga. That is, it's too late, too gone. But there are technologies that come and spawn from that can make a whole big difference, and that's why I think it's so important that companies like Apollo are taking classic Amigas and making more from them. I mean, I don't know if your audience actually know much about the standalone Vampire 4, but let me tell you what they showed me, which blew my head off. They showed me this little tiny PCB, not much bigger than a phone PCB, and they start running. It runs all A500 software, 600 software, 1000, 2000, 3000, 4000 software impeccably. The 4000 software is running at 30 times faster than the top 4000 ever did. The Amiga 500 pick is 300 times faster than the 500 was, right? Then, if that wasn't enough, at the switch of a button, it runs Atari ST software. And if that wasn't enough, at the switch of another button, it runs all Mac software up to 8.0. Now, I think that is incredible. On a little PCB the size of a phone. I think that opens up a whole new market opportunity.
Agreed, David. I want to. I have so many questions for you. I want to get to, but I know you've already been here for quite some time, so I want to ask you a few questions. But also, a lot of people in chat have asked some really good questions too. What I'd like to get to. So Amiga Mark asked a good one that's applicable to this conversation. He's asking, how would you market the Vampire V4 to a wider audience? Because the Vampire V4, it seems at this point, is incredible. We're very lucky. One of the Apollo team members is in our Westchester Amiga user group. We've seen the standalone Vampire and big Vampire fan here, but it seems like it might appeal to more like hardcore Amiga people versus say an Amiga Mini, which could appeal to a wider audience. The Commodore, we have the Commodore 64 Mini, we have like Ultimate 64, we have like the Commodore 64 Maxi, and I think a lot of Amiga people are frustrated as, look, where's our Amiga Mini? So I guess it's two questions. So I guess, how would you market the Vampire, and are we going to get an Amiga Mini?
Well, my question is, what is the market for an Amiga Mini? I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I was told about the 64 Mini, I was really skeptical about it. But they've sold a lot of numbers. All that is actually doing is, I'm not sure it's bringing in a new audience. It's bringing in people that had an interest in it already, and maybe just for old time's sake, it's not much money and I can run some games on it. And I think that's why the 64 Mini did pretty well. I'm not sure about whether I wouldn't invest in a mini version of the Amiga, as I wouldn't invest in the 64, because I don't think that market is big enough. I mean, as I understand it, it's less than 500,000 units that the 64 Mini has sold. And whilst that might seem a lot, it's not that much really when you think about it. In terms of okay, my vision for the future. Please excuse me. I've already had this conversation with the Apollo guys, and I had this conversation with them in August of last year at the Cologne. What's it called? Mental block. The big fair in Cologne. I'll think of it in a minute. It'll come to me. Stupid. Anyway, I took them to one side and I said, listen, this could open a whole new market that nobody has addressed yet. And they said, what are you talking about? So anyway, they've signed an NDA, but I'm going to tell about it now anyway, because it'll either happen or it won't happen. And I don't think anything will stop this happening if it goes ahead. What I perceive that product can do, I believe that product should now be implemented inside one of the normal stacking hi-fi systems, because it's so small it can fit in very, very easily. And what that will do is it will give a brand new lease of life to the hi-fi systems that currently run Blu-ray or whatever, and give so what you end up with with something in the home which can be used and manipulated for download streaming of TV programs and things, and it opens up a complete new market to people having this as a product that sits in their lounge as part of their entertainment system, and it gives you all the benefits of the Amiga games and the ST and the Mac system. So you imagine having a remote keyboard, remote mouse, and then the whole thing is connected up to stream and to. I mean, why do you think Apple and people like this are all getting into streaming? Because that's where the market's going. I see that as being a product to give a whole new lease of life to the hi-fi market.
So you're saying it's finally the right time for CD TV?
Well, no, but to be honest with you, one of the things that was also my business plan with Colin, and I forgot to mention, is that we were going to license CD32 to hi-fi companies because they were looking for something new. They'd just got CDs; they hadn't even got DVDs out there, no Blu-rays, nothing like that. So I wanted to license it to them, let them use the technology, develop it into a front-loadable system because that's what you need. Very easy to do. But now with the Vampire 4, because it's so small, it's so easy to integrate that into a system without a huge, machine costs and things like that. And so I think that's the right reason. And also because of this market of downloading and streaming videos and all these things, which the world is getting used to now, it does make perfectly good sense. I think it's a perfect match.
Yeah, it's very.
Do you think part of what makes that make more sense is that if they could get into a market like that that's broader than just Atari owners, Amiga owners, maybe some people into classic Mac stuff, they can get into that wider market, it would further lower the price and make Absolutely. It even look better to get into other markets.
Absolutely. It is the price issue that's the most important factor in this, because at the moment the cost of manufacturing it is very high. But if you go to a Toshiba or a Pioneer or one of these people, and they then turn it into a ready to buy chip, taking about hundreds of thousands of it and bring the price right down, it's an absolute no-brainer. That then leads you on to the opportunity to do portable issues, and I'm not saying necessarily laptops, but even something as small as a smartphone, because the PCB is small enough. It just opens up a whole new world. But you need the heavyweights in the hi-fi business. You need somebody to back it, who will then make the chips for it and make them en masse. And that then brings this product as a commodity item down to something. Look how much people are paying for a bloody iPhone. They're paying $2,000 for an iPhone. You can imagine what you can make with this product inside, which is going to be costing what, $200? $250, I'm guessing, but that's an estimate I think is fairly easy to achieve if you've got mass market of the chip making. So for me, it's a very exciting time, and it's maintaining the Amiga legacy, but it's still really nothing to do with an Amiga per se. But how great it is for us people who have been fans of the technology forever to see here there is potentially another big market, and that's what I do. That's why I'm a marketeer. I always look outside the box. There's always other ways to approach things, and find out something that should be done but nobody ever did.
It's really interesting. It's a really interesting direction to take it, because like I always thought there would be like a market for like something like an Amiga Mini, in addition to to Vampire. And one of the things that I hear a lot from the community, like especially at like these different shows, or people who are new to getting into Amiga, I think Amiga J also mentioned it in the chat, is like they want to like bring back their youth. They want to emulate their Amiga 500, and it's not so easy. Like the best way to do it, in my opinion, right now, like the easiest way is to use Amiga Forever, because it's all set up and ready to go and perfect. I think something like the Vampire could really benefit from something that's kind of like pre-installed and pre-ready to go, and like with a really easy user interface where people don't have to be an Amiga expert to set it up. I think that'd be really cool. I also know like a lot of people are emulating Amiga on like a Raspberry Pi, which works really really well, and it's a very inexpensive way to emulate the Amiga, and it's incredible. And the power on the Raspberry Pi 4 is amazing. The biggest hurdle is like getting it set up. Like people like us who know Amiga, like we can get it set up. We know like where to get the ROMs legally, and we know how to configure WinUAE. We know how to configure the Amibian. But just the average person who comes to Vintage Computer Festival East who wants to get into Amiga, it's a big stumbling point for them. They can't get into it. So I think something like the Vampire, if the Vampire could come, pre-installed, pre-set up in a certain way to get people off the ground, that would be huge for getting people into Amiga.
Yeah, well, the other thing that I believe is an opportunity for, I'm only talking about the standalone. I love the other products as well, don't get me wrong, but those other products need somebody to have an existing item. With the standalone, it doesn't, right? You've got a virgin audience, per se. But what I see about that is they could start selling. Really, they've got to get the cost of the manufacture down, which, again, comes back to going to one of the big Japanese companies, I suspect. But what they could do is they could be selling that product preloaded with games, and you're now giving an opportunity for the games authors who have not written for Amiga for a long, long time, and you're giving them another reason to write an Amiga program, because there is a whole new market coming out there that they can address. And that can be preloaded. And then a lot of these games are the ones that involve streaming as well. So you open up that whole marketplace to a much wider audience of people who do not rely on having an Amiga in their lounge already.
Dave, I'm feeling like this could be the Batman Pact version 2. Like, imagine you got a Vampire, or Amiga Mini or whatever it is, and you got the David Pleasance instead of the Batman Pack. Let's say you got the Psygnosis pack, right? It comes preloaded with every Psygnosis game. It's got a box like designed with artwork by Roger Dean. It's got a reissued Child of the Beast T-shirt in it. It's got a CD with some of like the most incredible music ever. Then it connects to the internet, like you're saying, and then once you're online, you can download other Amiga classics as well. You can download your Chaos engine. You can download a whole bunch of other stuff. I think something like that could be Walker. Well, no, Walker's part of Walker comes with it. It's part of the Psygnosis pack. Something like that could be really exciting too.
Yeah, but remember, you don't need a CD in the box anymore. So it can all be preloaded.
Oh, of course, but we love what we were saying before. We love the physicality of it, man. You gotta see some of these new Amiga games that are coming out. Like the packaging for them are works of art. It's they're absolutely incredible. And I think a lot of Amiga people are vintage computer collectors as well. So I think that they love the option to like not have a physical piece, so they can buy it for cheaper. But I think a lot of the collectors do love to have like the physical thing, and I know people would love to see some like Roger Dean artwork box. I know I want my Shadow of the Beast box back so bad.
I know you started at Commodore during the 64 days, and VIC-20 was still going at the time. And I know back then Commodore sold software for those machines as well. Commodore also sold magazines. Did you?
No.
Did you ever?
No magazines, never.
No. There were two. Commodore had two magazines in the States: Commodore Magazine and Power Play. Yeah. Did you ever?
Not in Europe, anyway. That's for sure.
Well, at least anyway, as far as the software, did you ever feel? I mean, obviously, you see that the software is key. I mean, you see I can sell the Amiga 500 by putting a bunch of top-end software with it, and people who want to buy that software are going to buy the machine, and then they buy more software. Obviously, you have to think Commodore can sell you one computer every so many years, but they could sell you software every day of the week once you own it. So do you ever feel that Commodore should have been in the software business? I mean, I think Apple makes more money on software than the hardware now.
No, I don't believe that. But no, my answer is absolutely no.
No?
Commodore were in the software business, and they did a terrible job of it. And I know that because I mentioned to you that Commodore built an assembly plant and warehousing and everything in the Midlands in Corby in the UK, and they suddenly decided to close that down. That was under when I think it was Rattigan was in charge, and he was told that Commodore had lost so many millions, and he was told to cut costs, and so he decided to close that down. And the relevance of this is that I had to get rid of all the inventory, and I can tell you there were hundreds of thousands of games that Commodore had got involved in that were complete lemons. one way or another. Um, and but the only game I think that Commodore got involved in that was successful was International Soccer for the 64. That was a big selling game. But because, of course, in those days, a lot of the software was either only cassette or it was cartridge. And the cartridges cost an absolute fortune. And if you're left with them, you can't do anything with them again. You can't reprogram them or anything. Anyway, what I can remember is I had hundreds of thousands of pieces of software to get rid of at like, at like 2 cents in the dollar or something, a ridiculous amount. And there's one interesting story. There was a game that I found. I think we'd got something like 2,000 of them. It was a game called Spirit of the Stones for the 64, and it was a game that was based. It was a treasure hunt, and it was based on the Isle of Wight, which is just up the southern end of England. It's part of England. And what it was something that was done in conjunction with the Isle of Wight Tourist Board. And the guy who wrote this program, he hid clues all around the Isle of Wight. And if you found them, you could claim a jewel. And in the end, I think there was something like a ruby or something like that was the ultimate prize to be won. Only one. Anyway, the time came when I had to dispose of these. And a guy came to me and he said, I'll give you £2 a copy for them. I want to do that, but I had to deal with the Isle of Wight Tourist Board because they were on a commission. So I rang them up, and their commission had been £5 a unit. So I rang them up and I said, "Look, I've got 2,000 units here. We've got to get rid of them. Can't get £5 for them. So how about I'm getting £2? How about we get £1? You get £1?" And they refused. So no way. I said, "Well, you didn't mean an option. I'll have to destroy them." "Oh, you won't do that. Watch your space." So I had to get 2 lawyers. I had to get a digger. We went to this place, which I won't tell you where it is. We dug a huge, great hole, put 2,000 Spirit of the Stones in there and buried them, and then had the affidavits written by the lawyers. But so when it comes to Commodore getting into software and saying, no, please no.
Unbelievable.
The other thing, though, is another thing, is that I always supported the software publishers. I mean, I always believed that, as I said, without software, we haven't got a business. And without hardware, they haven't got a business. So I can tell you absolutely honestly that Commodore was the first people ever to join FAST, the Federation Against Software Theft. I actually joined that, and I signed it, and we paid our annual fee because we wanted to support the software publishers. And that went such a long way to us getting closer to them because they realized that, we were against people copying and all that, which I think, as far as the 64 was concerned, everybody just turned a blind eye to. It was sort of rampant like that.
David, this has been really, really amazing. Thank you for being here. I know we're approaching the 2.5 hour mark, so I want to let you go on the sooner side. But I just want to get to a couple of the questions. People have been really patient and asking in chat. There's some really good questions, so maybe we'll be bouncing around topics a little bit. But
sure.
One of the big topics that's come up in chat is the CD32.
Right.
So there's been a lot of questions about the CD32. Do you think the CD32 was a good product? If the CD32 was launched with an 030, you think it could have saved the company? Are you intrigued by all the new Terrible Fire cards we're getting for the CD32 and that the CD32 has still got a life? Did Commodore ever get royalties for CD32 games? Do you want to tell us a little bit about the CD32?
Sure, absolutely. Well, the CD32 was, without any question at all, the first product that was ever planned to be designed, to be produced, and to be launched properly. It had a complete plan from start to finish, something which I pretty much insisted on. And it was going perfectly because I'd seeded development kits with all the major software publishers in the UK and some in Europe. I'd given them development kits, gave them development kits, and they were writing games specifically for the CD32 and the special features that it had over and above the 1200. So everything was perfectly planned. I had got my Christmas covered. We'd sold every Amiga 1200 that we knew we could get. They were all ordered and ready to go into the stores for Christmas. And then Mehdi Ali comes to me and he says, "I want to launch the CD32 in September." Right, and I said, "You are crazy. What's wrong with you?" And he said, no, he said, I need the extra revenue. We need money, we need money, we need money. And I said, Mehdi, two things. First of all, you are not going to get additional revenue. If you launch the CD32 before Christmas, all you will do is to kill all the sales of the 1200 because people will not buy the 1200 with the CD32 coming out as the new game changer, right? So the second thing of all is that we have no software ready for it. And when you launch a new product, you've got to have software that's ready for it, that shows off the best features of the machine, and so on and so forth. Anyway, he absolutely would not listen to me in any way, shape, or form. So the next thing I know, I am tasked with launching the CD32. Now, we did, even if I say so myself, we did a phenomenal job. My marketing team, particularly Dawn Levac, she was my marketing manager, she hired the Science Museum in London to launch the CD32 because it was a game changer. We launched on specifically on a specific date. We launched on the 16th of September, and the reason we did that, again, was part of the marketing picture. We used the slogan "16 will never be the same again," because we're going into a 32-bit product. And so that was all the invitations had a picture, the character, a cartoon character of 16 being kicked into the wayside because 32 was taken over. So anyway, everything's planned. We've got all the launch ready. I'd hired a guy called Chris Evans who was on his way up to be a very big television star and radio star. He still is.
Chris
But we
Evans.
got him. Yeah, he was on the new version of what's the motoring program. Anyway, he was my co-host at this launch. Anyway, about 2 or 3 weeks prior to the launch, there was an article published by in a PC magazine where Tom Kalinske, who was the worldwide president of Sega, was interviewed, and the interviewer said to Tom Kalinske, "What do you think about 32-bit CD-based games, consoles?" And he said, "Can't be done." Said, "If anybody can do it, it would be Sega, but it can't be done." End of story. And I think, thank you, God. Because if it's Sega saying they can't do it, that's fantastic. So what we did was that I got a professional voiceover guy, came in and he read out this article with all our audience there. We had all of the retailers, we had all of the software publishers and everything all in the audience. And of course, we read this out and they say, oh, by the way, then we open the curtains and the smoke and mirrors as you usually do. And there's the CD32 and it will be in your shops in 3 weeks. That was brilliant stuff. But what was even better than that was that in the period between the launch and its availability in the shops, the guy rang me up and he said, David, he said, you probably don't remember me. He said, but you and I have done some business together. He said, we have poster sites all over the UK, giant poster sites. And he said, have I got a deal for you? He said, from using us before, when you book a site with us, you pay us 50% up front. And then the week before it's going live, you pay the other 50%. He said, I've got 3 absolute top prime, large 96 sheet, the biggest poster sites in central London, best prime positions. Somebody's already paid their 50% and they've pulled out. I'd like to offer them to you for the 50% that's owing. Oh, and by the way, one of them is right outside Sega's head office. Can you imagine?
No, I can't.
So I immediately said yes, of course. Anyway, I don't know who it was who came up with it. I think it was probably our marketing. Not a marketing. It wasn't my marketing team. I think it was our agency. And I don't know if you know, but the advertising that Sega used to do, the television advertising, it was to be this good takes ages, and then to be this good, and they spun the word ages around, takes Sega. Very clever using Sega and ages. So we put this big sign up that said, to be this good will take Sega ages. Because they'd said so just 3 weeks before. And that was sensational. That was honestly, even without, we didn't have internet in those days. It went global. Everybody went raving about this advertising. But it was so good to do because they couldn't argue. It's what they'd said themselves.
You sound like the luckiest man in the world. You walk into the job agency the day that Commodore goes there to post a job. You happen to have done business with the guy who has a a billboard site right outside Sega's headquarters, just as Commodore's releasing the CD32.
I've been absolutely blessed, incredibly lucky in everything, I have to say. But then I went through a period, 2006 to 2009, 2010. I had a whole period of bad luck, one thing after another after another. So I've had my balance, but it's all been in shifts.
David, I got some more like 30,000-foot questions. Brother Bill's got a great one. He's asking if you ever considered teaching marketing in schools. Because I tell you, I know I would take that class for sure.
I've never even thought about it, to be honest with you. I honestly don't know where it comes from because I've never studied. I just have an instinct for. I'll give you an example. When I was working with 3M, there was a competition on the radio in Australia, in Brisbane, Australia, and it was a competition. We've got these clients, and they named the clients, and we're looking for a good slogan for them. So send in your slogans, and then somebody will win a prize. And I sent in two slogans. One was for the car hire company, and I won first prize. And the slogan I sent in was, because that's what they were, "We'll spoil you till it hurts," HERTZ. And they picked that up and they used that as their slogan for a long, long time. And I won $200 for that. There was another one that I got a special mention for, and that was a company that did carpets and lino and stuff. And my slogan was "For floors without flaws," FLAWS. It's the using of the English language. I've always loved the way that the English language can be manipulated that way. But I've never had any training whatsoever. I believe I'm persuasive, but I can only be persuasive about something that I really believe in. I can't sell something if I don't believe in it. I just can't be passionate about it.
I think your passion really shows through. Just talking to you, I mean, you're persuasive, but you can tell that it comes from the heart because you actually really care about what you're talking about. And I think your track record of success really, really speaks for itself, David. It's awesome. Every time I talk to you, I feel great and I feel inspired. You're also like a motivational speaker, and I'm hoping that will also. I'm excited because some people are asking about your thoughts for the future of Amiga, but I think one thing I really took away from this interview is like you have a lot of hope for the future of Amiga, and you think that a lot of these copyright issues can be resolved and the vultures can stop swarming. So that's really exciting.
I genuinely believe that. Yes.
Let's see. I got so many good questions. Mondala's asking if you ever had contact with Jack Tramiel.
I think I mentioned earlier. I actually met him for about 2 minutes.
That's it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, literally. I joined Commodore June of '83. And in January of '84, I went over to the CES Winter Show in Vegas. I had no right to be there because it had nothing to do with Commodore UK. But I was interested and I wanted to do some research. And actually, somebody with permission from Commodore actually paid my fare for me. And I went to the CES and Tramiel was there. On the stand, and he was shouting at everybody as he always did. He was quite a gruff guy, I think. I just went over, said hello, shook his hand, and then left. And then within about a few weeks of that, he'd left Commodore entirely.
So that's the show where he quit then.
Yeah, well, he didn't quit at the show. It was, I think, it would have been, a few days afterwards. There's a lot of conjecture about why he quit. And Leonard Tramiel says that it was because of the use of the jet by Irving, which Jack didn't like. But my understanding of it from what I've heard is that Jack wanted to bring his three sons onto the board, and that's really not good business practice because the board's got to be made up of people of all individual skills, which just like a jigsaw puzzle have the pieces that fit together and make a complete picture. And just bringing in people because they're in your family, I don't think that's a good practice at all. But yeah, anyway, Jack Tramiel just literally for about 2 minutes.
Well, speaking of characters, there's a couple other questions. I think it's a good one to ask. And we know that your relationship with Petro is a bit strained, but he is part of the story post Commodore. So is there going to be any Petro in your upcoming book?
Well, interesting. Trevor and I talked about that very recently. I won't approach him because I said he actually admitted to Colin at the Amiga 30 event in Neuss, just after Amsterdam. He admitted to Colin, who was there, that it was him that was responsible for stealing away New Star Electronics. If I'd have been there, I would have decked him on the spot. I was so angry. But I won't talk to him. But Trevor is going to write to him and say, look, we're doing this story. Will you give your viewpoint? I suspect he'll say no. But if he does, we'll just write in the book and say we asked Petro and he declined to comment. I suspect he will say no, but Trevor is going to, because we think we should try and do that. But I have got I'll have some stories from Stefan Domeyer, who was part of Amiga Technologies, and a couple of other people as well. So it's not going to be ignored. It's just I just doubt whether Petro will actually say anything.
Oh, well, good. I mean, good on you for trying to tell the whole story. You know, being as unbiased as possible. You know, even though the book will be told from your perspective. There's just so much complexity and with this whole post Commodore situation. So that's something great to look forward to. Let me see if I've got. Okay, here's a great one. Here's a great one from what I have a great one here. He asked it really well. Amiga Mark had a great one. What do you think it is that made like the Amiga so special? Like why? Like what is it about the Amiga that causes like such warm emotions with us? And like why are we still here? Many years after the demise of Commodore, and we're here and we're excited about the future of Amiga. We're excited about vampire cards. We're excited about people making new things for the Amiga. Like what is it that makes it special?
Well, I think the answer to that is that the people who bought it first, because the Amiga was launched, the Amiga 500, forget the 1000 because it was never really made available to the masses. But when the 500 was launched, we appealed to a generation of people who were interested in technology, interested in something new. And the Amiga made everything look incredible, and it made it look easy so that people didn't have to read, pages and pages of boring script in order to write a small program. They could start using it pretty much straight away, and therefore they got an interest in things which has probably shaped their life forever. I'll guarantee once you start getting involved in the IT business, and the Amiga, let's face it, made it very, very easy because of the design of the custom chips, taking away some of the workload of the main power chip. That it made everything easy, and it made everything look so incredible compared to Pong, which was not that many years beforehand. So I think what it is that we just reached a generation at the right moment in their time, because the 60s and 70s and 80s was all about the music, and then that all kind of died away. And then I think the generations were looking for something new, and I think the home computer came in just at the right time, and the Amiga was at the pinnacle of that technology at that moment in time. And I just think it becomes part of our heart and part of our DNA forever. That's my answer. That's what I honestly believe.
I agree. It's so weird because I still do get that warm fuzzy feeling every time I sit down at the Amiga. Because of course a lot of it's nostalgia, but I even got that warm fuzzy feeling back then. There was just something about it. It's got a soul. And on that note, again, moving forward, future of Amiga. Do you think the Amiga is something that like the next generation of kids can enjoy? Do you think Amiga will live on to the next generation, or do you think it's going to kind of fade away when us like Generation X folks move on and it's not the nostalgia trip anymore?
God, I wish I had a crystal ball. What I do know is that I've been very heartened. Not this year because we've not had any shows, but last year, all the shows that I went to all over the place. I must admit, I didn't get to the US last year, although I do intend to the next US show. All the shows that I went to, and all of these people are turning up, people the age that you expect them to be, but they're bringing their children and they're Spectrum games and loving it and enjoying that experience. So I think it's up to the appetite of the next generation as to what they're actually looking for. My fear is that we are in the clutches of the five big tech companies at the moment, with the five big, obviously the Microsofts of this world, Facebook, and Amazon, and we're in their clutches, and they are leading everything. Apple, they're leading everything that we do, and once they've got hold of you by the shorts and girlies, you can't get away from them. And I think that that monopoly needs to be broken. It needs to be something that give people the opportunity. I mean, what bloody right do Amazon have to take my data and sell it to somebody else? So I know I look on Amazon or something, and 5 minutes later I've got ads appearing in my, on screen from products that I was looking at, and they're making an absolute fortune. That what right have they got to do that? So I think that technology, it's all coming down to a small device held in the hand. I think it won't be long before that device is actually part of your clothing. I don't think it'll be, something you hold in your hand much longer, and will be more and more powerful. And all that device will be is just an access point. All the power is out in the sky, and you'll have amazing things. And I honestly believe that's going to be the future. So what it is about finding the right common denominator that appeals to the kids, because they're the future, of course. That we want them to buy stuff. I mean, let's be honest about it. The watches from Apple and people like that have been an absolute disaster because they're just not good enough. But that technology is changing day by day by day, and it's products like the Apollo that show you what you can do in a small space. And that technology will be developed to cost much, much less. Every run will be much, much less. And so but in answer to the question, I really don't know. It's a very complex question, but one that I've always got my ears open for. So if anybody's got any ideas, come and get in touch with me.
I think now is a ripe time, a ripe time to get the Amiga into the hands of the next generation, because retro is hot, and it's not just hot with guys like us who are reliving their youth, but like the whole retro style is popular. If you go onto Steam right now, a lot of the new Steam games, are retro styled and pixel art styled. I think the kids are so used to incredible things like now like real time ray tracing and Fortnite and photorealistic stuff. I think some of the kids appreciate taking a step back and doing something that's a little bit more analog. I mean, I know like vinyl records are back in, and retro is huge in pop culture now. I mean, look at Stranger Things. That is right out of the 80s, and it's one of the biggest shows in the world. So I think like right now would be a great time for Amiga to get into the hands of the next generation. I know a lot of our viewers like have kids, and they're playing Amiga games with their kids, and the kids love it because the games are good. If the games are good, they're just as good back then as they are today. A good game is a good game. It doesn't matter its age or how it looks. If it's fun to play, that's all that matters.
Absolutely. Agreed.
All right, David, let's I'm gonna ask one more question. I think I asked most of the questions. I didn't ask every single one because they're very similar, but Tenmark is asking if you've been in touch with Mike Badalina about the book. Mike is the owner of Clianto.
Yeah, Mike and I go back a long way. In fact, in the era of the packs, the Batman Pact and so on, I had done a deal originally with Electronic Arts, who most people don't know, but when they came to the UK, they were almost broke. They had no business, and I met up with the guys. David Gardner was one of them, and I put the proposal to them about using the D-Paint in the Batman Pact. Ultimately, we agreed a price, and David will be the first one to tell you. I've actually met him in the last few years. He now has an investment business investing in games. But anyway, he would be the first to tell you that we kind of saved their ass because and especially because the first pack we did 186,000 pieces, that whatever price I paid for them, I can't remember now what it was, but that got them out of trouble. But anyway, they came to me one day, some packs later, and I didn't like their attitude. They came to me and they said, David, we know that you can't get anything else that competes with this, so we're going to put the price up. I don't like people who deal with me like that. If they'd have come to me and said, David, to be honest with you, we're just not making enough. Can we get a little bit more out of it? That's a whole different conversation. But when they hold a gun to you and say, we want more for it, I went out and I found Personal Paint, which was Mike Batalana's product, and gave him the deal instead. So I've known Mike all that time, and yes, I have contacted him, and yes, he is prepared to be interviewed. We're quite good friends actually. Every time we meet, we always get together, have dinner together, whatever, you know. So
That's
yes,
great.
indeed.
That's great. I think a lot of people would love to hear from him.
Yeah, I would love to hear from him too, because whenever a new version of Amiga Forever would come out, sometimes I would lay out. I've actually sent him a picture laid out of all the physical copies of Amiga Forever over the years that I've purchased, and sent him the picture. And he's always, I think, in fact, one time he sent me a free key because he's like, you've been. You know, he's just amazed that I've been his customer for so long.
Yeah, and like I was saying before, you know, Amiga Forever is a really good, easy way for people to get into Amiga. It's a great product, and it'd be great to hear about that. And it would also be great. I know he's also been at the center of some of the copyright issues, so I would like to know more about that because I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I just know there's a lot going on behind the scenes, so it'll be really interesting to uncover that. Let's take a look at the Kickstarter, David. I'm going to pull it up on the screen. We've been talking with David John Pleasance, who is former managing director of Commodore UK. He wrote an amazing book called Commodore: The Inside Story, which tells the story of Commodore from the insider's perspective, and David does not pull any punches, man. He's got amazing stories to tell.
Bill, I just want to tell you, I just pulled the page up and I saw the number of backers. Like it was rolling like a stock ticker.
I've got it up right now. Yeah, I'm so happy for you, David. Yeah, so the Kickstarter just launched on Friday the 12th, and you're already a third of the way to your goal. You got 10,000 out of the 31,000 goal. That's awesome, David. So when they back your book, David, it looks like there's going to be an ebook version. There's going to be a hardcover version. Everyone who enters, everyone who backs it gets entered in a raffle to win a standalone vampire, which is awesome. I want that. It looks like so you're co-writing with Trevor Dickinson. It's obviously Apollo team plays a big part of this, as well as Stephen Fletcher. He's part of the Amiga 2020 documentary, is also a perk. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about all the perks that you're offering here, David?
Yeah, because it looks like you've partnered with some of the other some other things that have been on Kickstarter.
Yes, I've always been a great believer that there's safety in numbers, and also not any one person has all the answers. So I like to gather around me a team that have things to offer. So basically, I've kept it really simple this time. There's an ebook available, which of course will be available before the hardback, because the hardback gets sent off to get printed, and that takes several weeks. So from the moment we've got the finished manuscript, we can get that produced into ebooks. Then there's a hardback book on its own available. Then I've got two next levels. One is for 8-bit lovers, because that comes with free downloads. Well, it's not free. I mean, it's £10 more to buy one of these the 8-bit lovers bundle, and that's got downloads of Andy Remick's video, Memoirs of a Spectrum Addict, and that's the director's cut. There's a new version of that. Plus, also I'm actually giving away free. My two sons have got their own band, and they've been in the studio the last few months, and they've got an album that's not even released yet, which is absolutely awesome. And I'm giving it away free because I want to give my boys the opportunity to get a new audience. So there's an album of 11 or 12 tracks that's a free download that you guys are going to love, especially if anybody that likes sort of reggae style of music. It's sensational. And I'm not just saying that because they're my kids. I'm saying it because it's bloody awesome. But then there's a second level, another third level, which is the same, but this is for Amiga lovers. So that's got the Amiga 2020 video to download, because that's more pertinent to Amiga lovers, and the other perks that go along with that, along with the free download of the boys' album. And then we go to the bumper bundle, which it's got everything except the cake with the candle on the top, basically. So it's very simple and straightforward. There's no doubt in my mind that the bumper bundles, either one of them, they're by far the best value. Thing is, this is that the book the cost of the shipping of the book is pretty much an unknown, and I've gone a little bit on the high side because it almost certainly will go up by the time the book's printed. But I think everybody, I mean, enjoy it, because I'm certain that what I'm going to deliver, you're going to be really happy with. I really hope so.
The hard part I'm having is this free museum entry. I'm wondering how I'm going to collect that one from the United States here.
No. The point is this: is that these guys, it's Bart in Holland and Andrew in the UK. They've got these retro computer museums that need support. And I've always supported both of them. I've been to both places and signed books and done all sorts of things there. So I just said to them, look, why don't you give away a free ticket? If anybody can use it, they will. If they don't, then you've lost nothing. But it's one ticket. So let's say, you go over to Europe, you go to one of the Amiga 35 events next year, and that's going to Holland. You might want to go and visit the museum. You've got a free ticket for entry. Now, the point of the fact is that it's putting somebody into his door. Secondly, you'll probably go with family, so you might have to buy another ticket and so on and so forth. So all it is, it's this cross promotion. And I think we all know that a lot of people will not use those free tickets, but it's there if you want to. You can give them to somebody else, somebody else is going to Europe.
I want to cash in on those. It's a motivation to get there. That museum looks beautiful. It sounds
like you and me have to arrange a trip.
We got to do it. That museum looks beautiful. I follow them on Instagram, and their collection is awesome. And David, that's a good point too. Just on a personal note, there's a lot of museums here in the States are closing due to the COVID, including one. I have a film in a museum in Hollywood. I had a film in a museum in Hollywood all about Vanity Fair and the Hollywood issue, and sadly that museum closed. They couldn't remain open during COVID. So supporting the museums is a really, really important and honorable thing to do. So thank you for that. And these computer museums keep the history alive, and they can introduce the next generation to all the computers that we loved growing up. It's really important.
Hey, Bill, if you want just 1 second, I'd like to talk to your viewers for just one moment.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to just tell everybody, when you go on the Kickstarter, this is very important. You keep scrolling down. That one on the bottom, that's the one you want. That's the level you want to bid. You just back at that level, everybody. That's.
Thanks for that PSA, Anthony.
I'm always trying to help everyone.
Look at that. But here's a shot from the museum. Look at that. That's gorgeous. That gorgeous Commodore 64 there. I love how they have everything set up and laid out too. I want to make the trip.
There's a picture. There's a picture of the museum, and that got me like right away. And the chairs in front of each computer is just an interesting, because I mean I'm guessing that means that all these machines are operable in there. In that
yes, absolutely they are. Yeah, and can I also tell you that the museum in the UK in Leicester, that has got a copy of Commodore's Royal Warrant. Commodore, actually, when I joined Commodore in '83, they'd just been awarded the Royal Warrant, because apparently the royal household had bought some pets. So we had the Royal Warrant for a short amount of time, and that Royal Warrant actually appeared on the VIC-20 packaging. It was actually the label we were able to use. But anyway, when Commodore closed down, I rescued the warrant from a skip.
Wow.
Somebody was going to throw it away. Anyway, so I kept it. And to be honest, the truth of the matter is I actually took a color photocopy of it. I think as a backup, if you like. So anyway, I gave the original one, I gave to, there's a museum in Cambridge, a Museum of Computing History it's called. They are very well supported by government, and because of their proximity to Cambridge University and stuff, they don't need as much help, I think, personally, as guys like Andrew do in Leicester. But anyway, I gave that to them because I thought it was the right place for it. And then one day I discovered I'd got a color copy, and which looks exactly the same as the original. It really does. So I gave that to them in Leicester, and they absolutely love it. They put it up in pride of place, and they absolutely adore it. The other thing that they've got is, out of all of the books I had printed, I found 2 books where the book has been printed with the cover on upside down. So when you open the front page, it's the back of the book. Right? There's 2 of those. So I've given them one. They're not ever allowed to sell it because it would be worth a lot of money, I think. And I've got one which I'm just going to keep for myself forever. But I'm a great believer. We have to support each other. We absolutely do.
That's awesome. It's a small community, and it really is important. And you can conquer more when you align yourself with people versus trying to do everything on your own. It's a team effort,
Absolutely.
David, it's just been awesome. 10-minute Amiga Retrocast just backed your project for £40, and everyone else should too. David, this has been awesome. I can't believe. I said 2 hours. I knew it was gonna go 3, though, to be honest, because I know you have so many amazing stories, and you've got even more stories to tell. If you want a link to the Kickstarter, do !book in the chat. I'm also gonna put the link into the description of the video. David, I know you have davidpleasance.com. Can people go to davidpleasance.com to buy Commodore: The Inside Story, the book I've got right here?
No. That's Downtime Publishing.
Downtime Publishing. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, downtimepublishing.com, please.
I'll put that link in the description too.
Just to explain, I'm moving over to davidpleasance.com, but until it's all completely set up and running, I'm not prepared to put down downtimepublishing.com because it's working and people are buying all the time from me. So as soon as it's ready, I will convert over to that. But for the moment, just keeping them separate.
Cheers. David, is there anything, you've talked extensively here today. Is there anything else that you would like to add that you didn't mention today?
Oh, not really. I just want to say, you guys, all of you guys, you'll never understand how thrilled and blessed I feel about the way that I've been accepted into this community, especially after 25 years in the wilderness. Because obviously when Commodore, eventually got sold to ESCOM, I was battered and bruised. I got out of the industry completely. I really went under the radar. I remarried. I married a Dominican girl. We went to Australia. I bought a restaurant and ran that for 5 years, opened a couple of other businesses, and I had nothing whatsoever to do with the industry. And it was a shock when I suddenly got an invite via email to go to the Amiga 30 celebration in Amsterdam. And I walked into it and I suddenly find I'm being treated like a rock star. And all I have to say is that I can't thank you enough. Anybody who's met me, you know who I am. I'm 100% what you see is what you get. I don't have any side to me. If I don't agree with something, I'll tell you, because I believe that's the right way to be in life. And the good thing is that I could never be a liar because my memory's not good enough. So that's why anybody asks me a question, I can tell it from my heart. That's how I remember it, and I don't have to worry about what lie did I tell. So, but the most important thing, the message is thank you guys for your support for me. And yes, I'd love you to buy the book. But if you haven't got it, buy the other book as well, the first book, because that's the foundation of it, I think,
Yes, do you think you might do another publishing run? Because you said there's only a few copies left of the first book. Do you think when your second book comes out, you might publish more of the first book?
It depends on the demand. Obviously, I'm not going to print something that's going to sit there and gather dust, because that's just that's insane. But I may be in a position to do a deal with the printers that does a rerun of the first book, because I've already had 2 runs of it, and then does the first run of the new book as well. It just depends. The first book was printed in Malta because of the quality, and I've been offered I'm using the same people, but I've been offered opportunity in Malta or another place. The other place is a little bit cheaper. I just need to see the quality of what comes out. But I want the same quality at the very least as the first book was. But yes, in answer to your question, if there is a demand there, I will do another run.
What about an ebook version of it? So, if it's
cost prohibitive, they're already out, and they are on offer on the £40 level. There's ebook version, and there's 3 versions of ebook. There's Mobi, EPUB, and PDF.
So just to make it clear, at the £40 version of the pledge for the new book, you also get Commodore: The Inside Story ebook.
Yes.
Oh, that's
yes,
brilliant.
Indeed.
Brilliant.
Or you can get it as an audiobook.
Oh wow! And
that was done. It was a big mistake on my part because it certainly hasn't paid. But I got Dan Wood to do that. Dan is he actually works with me in Friend. But he's also the collaborator with all the work that I do on this thing, and he actually recorded it because he's a professional radio DJ. He works 7 days a week, 1 day pre-recorded, for Gem Radio, and he did the audio book, and it took so long. It's 8.25 hours. The audio book is. And of course, what we didn't take into account is every time you turn a page, you've got to edit the noise out. We hadn't thought about that, but anyway, and it's a fantastic. It's 90,000 words, so it's a very good book. So you can choose either download. You get the either the ebooks or you get the audio book, all included. That's why I think the £40 deal is an absolute cracking deal, because you're getting such a lot for your money, Because the hardback book's £30, as has been all along, and then the new book is £30. That's
so along. Smart. And your extras for the first book were outstanding. I have the Blu-ray with your interview with Dan Wood, and I also have the CD where you made the song about J minor. So your extras have always been on point. I really enjoyed those a lot, David.
Yeah, I mean, I deliberately kept this Kickstarter simple, but there's no reason why I can't add those in as a download as well. We haven't done it yet. I've not sold one book through a bookstore, and I've not done any downloads through Amazon or any of those people, mainly because I just don't like them as people. I think their ethics and ethos is all wrong. But there's no reason why I can't offer it as the videos as a download. And they are fun, and also on those videos, interestingly, because you talked about Jack Jamil, what I put on both of the DVD and Blu-ray, not only is it a few interviews with me and Dan, and a lot of them which are very funny, tongue-in-cheek. I think we were probably drunk on some of them. I've also put a documentary on there, which was produced by Kim Justice. It's a 40-minute documentary all about Jack Jamil, which I thought was the perfect thing to put on there, so people have got the whole story about how Jack Jamil started, and what it developed into, the Commodore, and what it ended up with. So yeah, I'm happy to. If somebody really wants that, I can look into that.
It's a great perk. I love it, David. Top quality production as always, David. Thank you again for taking the time to be here, David. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I learn something new every time. You inspire me every time. And I'm so excited and thankful that you're back involved with the Amiga. It's just going to make the Amiga's future like that much brighter. And I know everyone in chat is very, very thankful for you taking like the 3 hours to come on here with us today. That's really generous of your time. They said you should be knighted. I agree with that. Ram's got a great question. Will there be signed copies of the book?
I haven't put that in deliberately this time because the logistics of it were horrendous. What happened was, and again, this is complete naivety on my part, but I offered to sign the books, and then I did a deal with Amiga Kit. It were going to wholesale the book for me, and when the book was ready to be shipped from the printers to us, I thought, well, there's no point in shipping everything to me and then me shipping on to Amiga Kit, so I got their copies shipped direct to them. Which just saved time and money. But I never thought that his books were not going to be signed, and mine were. Mm-hmm. So what happened is, of course, as soon as he got the books, he advertised them and started shipping them. I got the books, and we had to actually physically sign and wrap and post every one. And it's only me and two of my sons, but only one at a time. And it took us ages. So before I know it, I got complaints from the backer saying, they got their books sooner than us. What's going on? How dare you? And I'd never thought of it. It was such a naive thing on my part. But all I can tell you is that to actually sign, now it's okay. But suddenly when you've got 1,500 books to sign and everybody's waiting for them, you have imagined the time it takes to do that.
Especially if you write them a note.
What did your wrist look like when you were done signing all those books?
Oh man, don't even want to talk about it. Anyway, I am conscious of the fact that people do want it signed, but my commitment is that I'm going to be going, as soon as we're out of this lockdown situation and these events start coming, I'm going to be going to as many events as I possibly can, and I will be glad to sign any book when people come up to me, and I don't charge very much. Joke. No, what I'm saying is that rather than commit to signing books, because of the time it takes, logistically, it's such a nightmare. Unless I go to where they're actually being printed and get them as they come off the production line and then sign them. But that's a difficulty too, because they have to dry and all this sort of thing. It's not an easy thing to do. I understand the question is a valid and very good question. but I hope you understand why my answer is what it is.
It'll be even more fun to get it signed in person. It's
Yep.
always a pleasure to spend time with you and hang out, David.
And if a person takes the book to you at an event to get it signed in person, they're also helping that event by participating.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, entirely. It's a win-win situation, which I love.
David, this has just been incredible. Again, thank you so much. And Anthony, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I know we're doing it over here on Twitch, but you know, I miss you, man. I love you. I hang out more. Yeah.
I miss you too, and I miss you as well, David. Hopefully, again, after all this is over, the shows start up again. Hopefully you'll be in one in our neck of the woods, or we'll get to your neck of the woods. And
well, your audience obviously don't know, but I think Bill does. I'm actually planning to move to Miami.
You'll be very close to Anthony.
me.
You'll be neighbors.
Yeah, literally, as soon as this restrictions that Trump has introduced, 2 weeks quarantine when I arrive, well, you're not even allowed to go at the moment. But once that's over, I was actually in Miami looking for somewhere to rent to live short term, March the 13th and 14th. And I was planning to be there 2 weeks to find somewhere to live and get everything set up. And then everything closed down, and I had to come back early. So I will be in America anyway, as soon as possible. And therefore, I obviously will be at the shows in America as many as I can.
We got some good ones.
And when you are in Miami, let me know. And I'll and maybe we can get together.
I'll be down for that. I would love to come down.
Where
you had me at Miami.
I'm up just a little north of Naples in Florida. So
okay, that's fine. That's lovely up there. That's Clearwater, that sort of area.
Fort Myers area.
Oh, okay.
We got a lot of good shows here too, David. You know, we have Vintage Computer Festival East that Anthony and I exhibit at. There's a whole bunch of vintage computer festivals under that umbrella here. We've got Ami West. I know there's a big Commodore show in Las Vegas as well. So there's good events here as well.
Well, it was my intention to attend as many of them as I possibly can.
David, thanks again, and thanks everyone for watching today. Anthony, thank you, my man. When I hang up with you guys, I'm gonna have to hang up with both of you at the same time, so I'll say goodbye to both of you. And both of you, I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you,
awesome.
Thank you, the audience, for being such great listeners.
Yeah, and David, thanks. Good luck. I mean, really, good luck with the Kickstarter. I know you're gonna smash the goal. You're gonna crush it.
I'm looking forward to seeing the result once you do smash it.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks. All right. Have a great one. Have a great rest of your weekend, guys. Bye-bye.
We'll see you on the next episode of the Guru Meditation.